Good evening, and welcome to the October 15th, 2025 Lower Merion Board of Commissioners meetings. We have one meeting this evening, the Building and Planning Committee. Before we start, please silence your cell phones. Amplifying equipment is available for those having difficulty hearing during the meeting, and the room is also equipped with telecoil technology. When the floor is open for public comment, comment will first be taken from those present in the room and then from those attending virtually. Please introduce yourself before beginning your comments. And with that, I will turn things over to our Building and Planning Chair, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Good evening. So we have 8 items on the agenda for Building and Planning tonight. The first is for an authorization to advertise an ordinance, Chapter A180 of the Historic Resource Inventory for Elliott, 17 Elliott Avenue. Just a little game plan about how we're going to handle this, because I'm guessing that some of you here are here to offer public comment on this matter. We're going to start by a brief presentation by Greg Pritchard, who's going to discuss some things that maybe haven't been discussed with this matter before. We are then going to go to public comment, and at that point we'll ask those of you who wish to offer public comment to come over to this podium over here. The first thing you should start with is to state your name and the neighborhood of the township that you live in. You then will have about 3 minutes to offer your public comment. The Township Secretary has a timer right there set at 3 minutes. What we ask you to do, in fairness to everybody who wants to talk, is that if you hear the timer go off, that's the 3-minute mark, and we ask you to begin sewing up your comments at that point. If you don't do that, I will reluctantly ask you to wrap up your comments shortly thereafter. I also ask people to remember that this is a continuation of this matter. The board has heard from some of you previously, and so we're already very familiar with this, and we're not starting at first base like we don't know what's happening on this matter, and I would ask that you consider that when you make your public comment. So. And then after public comment, we will open it up for commissioners to make comments that they wish to make or ask questions of Mr. Pritchard, and that will be it. So let's get started. Greg, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Good evening, everybody. And I have a brief presentation. As Commissioner Grimes noted, we have discussed this item previously in other meetings, so I won't go into too much about what's already been discussed. But again, for your reference, on the screen is a picture of the property in question, 17 Elliott Avenue. As I discussed previously, it was designed in 1900 by William L. Price, who was one of the most prominent architects in the Philadelphia area at that time. There are also, as I noted, there are several resources in the township, both Class 1 and Class 2, designed by Mr. Price, that are currently on the inventory. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to make clear to you as well, and this was noted in the memo as well. But first of all, having to do with Class 1 historic resources, what the Class 1 designation really means. It does not provide permanent protection for a resource. Permanent protection is really only possible through the application of a facade easement, which are required in cases like conditional use approvals. So Class 1 designation only requires that exterior alterations be reviewed by the Historical Commission and approved by the Board of Commissioners. And then the board has the ability to deny an application that it feels is inappropriate, but can also approve an application against the recommendations of the Historical Commission. I compiled some statistics. Now this goes back to the May meeting before our resource inventory update last month, which mainly shifted some historic objects from Class 2 to Class 1. When these statistics were compiled, 60% of Class 1 resources are residential properties. 68% of Class 2 resources are residential properties, and 60% of properties in historic districts are residential properties. And in terms of incentives, these are the kinds of things that are made available, the benefits that are made available to owners of historic properties. And we haven't done a formal evaluation of this property. There isn't an engineered site plan that we can refer to or anything like that, but it's possible that a number of incentives for uses could be made available to this property that wouldn't be otherwise available to non-designated properties in the township. And this is the list of potential uses up on the screen and also in the memo. And finally, I wanted to note something about deed restrictions. As has been noted many times, there are preservation-related deed restrictions on this property dating back to the 1983 deed. And the township, as has been said many times in this room, has no role in the enforcement of deed restrictions. Deed restrictions are legal agreements between two private parties recorded by the county, not the township, and are not subject to enforcement by the township. The township also has no role in interpreting the legality of enforcing these restrictions and is not obligated to impose local historic preservation protections on a property because of deed restrictions. And that's very important. And I wanted to emphasize, to wrap up, that the Historical Commission did find that this property meets the criteria for Class 1 designation, which requires adherence to at least three of the designation criteria outlined in the code. They found in agreement with the nomination that the property meets 5 of the 10 criteria, which is well beyond what is necessary for Class 1 designation. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or...
Thank you.
Yes.
Just while Greg is up here, does anyone have any questions for Greg? This is not comment time. Yeah, Commissioner Zeloff.
Thanks, Commissioner Grimes. Greg, can you speak to the township practice from the beginning of the ordinance in that, it's my understanding that we have never designated a home, a residence, outside of the historic district over the objection of an owner?
That is my understanding. Of course, I haven't been here since the beginning of the historic resource inventory being in the code. But to our knowledge, based on our research, we believe that to be true. When the ordinance was adopted in 2000, property owners were given the opportunity to opt out of inclusion from the inventory. Many did. The majority of those property owners were residential. And as you noted, historic districts are a bit of a different thing. It's difficult when designating a huge area as a historic district. It would be, I think, nearly impossible to get 100% buy-in from all homeowners. But in terms of individually designated properties, that is our belief, yes.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Thanks, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Greg? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. I neglected, thank you, Greg. I neglected to say I believe the applicant's attorney, the owner's attorney is here. So I'm going to give Mr. Rosenzweig a few minutes if you want to make some comments, and then we'll go to public comment.
I'm also here as well. I represent the nominees.
To do what?
I represent the nominees. Adam Garcia sent my notice and
Okay, well, I'm going to let Mr. Rosenzweig go first, but thank you I did not know you were here. Thank you.
Commissioner Grimes, you want me here or here?
Has it been that?
Answered that question the way you wanted to,
Yes.
so much appreciated. And good evening, everybody. It is always an honor to appear before you. So many of you with whom I served so many years ago, and some of the new commissioners. I appreciate all of your service and the great job that you do for the citizens of Lower Merion. I'm Phil Rosenzweig, Silverang, Rosenzweig, and Haltzman, and I am here tonight with my client and friend Tom Roberts to vigorously urge you to not advertise this property for Class 1 designation, and therefore, in fact, to not designate this property as a Class 1 resource. There's some very big picture issues that are involved here. There is the play between private property rights and the very integrity of the Lower Merion Township Historic Commission and Historic Designation process that I want you to keep in mind. This house has never been included in any list of properties that were worthy of designation and protection through the exhaustive efforts of Historic Commission work and the various consultants that the township has had employed over the course of multiple decades. This one never rose to the level of even being a discussion point. Secondly, it is not your Historic Commission who has advocated for the inclusion of this property as a Class 1 on the list. It is not another resident of Lower Merion. It is not any of you who thought that perhaps this house had some special need for protection or designation. Rather, for the first time in my memory, and I've been an active part of this township for a long time at this point, it is an outside advocator. The applicant is not a resident, citizen, or active participant in any preservation organization in Lower Merion Township. They are, for lack of a better way to describe it, the heirs to the party to a private transaction in 1983 through which my client acquired this property. And I would suggest to each of you that not only has Lower Merion never designated an individual residential property as a Class 1 over the objection of an owner, but you've never entertained an application of this sort from a party who is not part of our Historic Commission or a party who has a direct interest in participation in Lower Merion Township. These folks are 40 years plus out in a chain of title, and there are private deed restrictions that are strictly a matter of contract between Mr. Roberts and the descendants of Ms. Wunsch, and if I've not said that correctly, I apologize. And by the way, none of them actually address the historic preservation of this house. Rather, what it does, and you have a copy of the deed, or you should have a copy of the deed, is it gives Ms. Wunsch, or perhaps her heirs and successors, the right to buy the property back, should it be offered for sale, and for the interior components of this house that made it so special, and that you all know are not part of a Class 1 historic designation, because they are interior to the house and aren't subject to the purview of the Department of Interior standards, that those aspects of the house be maintained so that one day, should Wunsch or her successors and heirs wish to purchase the property back, at fair market value, by the way, they would be able to do so with the interior characteristics relatively intact. That's a private matter, and that is not for your purview. I think I want to thank Mr. Pritchard for what I thought was a very fact-based and reasonable memo that educated everybody on those points. So we have the owner's objection, and I want to also highlight something I think is very important. This property it's beautiful, it's interesting, it's unique, it's architecturally, I think, very appealing. But this is what used to be known as middle-class housing in Bryn Mawr. And this community has a lot of discussion about what it means to have middle-class housing in Bryn Mawr. You know, this wasn't in the fancy neighborhoods. This wasn't, an estate house. This was a regular house. And I think you have to ask yourselves about whether this board, or any board, frankly, wants to make it so unachievable and unaffordable for a regular person to own a regular house in Bryn Mawr by imposing Class 1 standards on them that they simply cannot afford to live up to. This house was purchased for $87,500. If it has a Class 1 designation, the slate roof replacement on this house, to be historically accurate, would cost 2.5 times that amount just for the roof. And that would be the burden that you'd be imposing upon an owner of this property. So the deed restrictions don't create a historic designation at all. They are not, respectfully, in your purview. This property, it should not be designated a Class 1. And to show you my client's good faith, I turn to whomever among you are either the once descendants or the, the applicants in this case, and I make you this offer.
Excuse me,
Want to buy
Mr.
this property?
Rosenzweig, could you
I'm
address the
sorry.
board, please?
I'll just say
Thank
it to you, but
Yes,
I'm
thank
speaking
you.
to them. If they would like to buy this property, it is available for sale at fair market value. They can acquire it. We can negotiate that. They can close in 30 days. And after they acquire the property, I encourage them to come back to you and then offer it to you with a Class 1 designation. So if it's that important, if they really mean what they say, then let them exercise their rights under the deed, let them acquire the property at fair market value, and let them ask you as the owner to designate this as a Class 1. On behalf of the current owner, I urge you and respectfully ask you not to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you go away, do any commissioners have questions, particularly for Mr. Rosenzweig? Commissioner Bernheim.
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioner Reynolds. Phil, beyond just the cost of the roof that you mentioned, are there any estimates, analysis as to any other potential cost implications to the current owner if the property were to be designated Class 1?
Thanks, Commissioner Bernheim. So I used the roof because it's a kind of dramatic example because it's slate. And in a Class 1 designated property, you need to do slate for slate in the same style, laid in the same manner, and it has to be visually consistent. Windows are another great example. The cost of replacement windows are astronomical. Anybody who has endeavored to do that, as I did in my house in Bryn Mawr, and I guess I should have said earlier in the record, I'm a resident of Commissioner Gavrin's ward, Ward 6, Rosemont, Villanova, and have been for 25 plus years. It's an astronomical undertaking definitionally, but in a house like this, to actually acquire windows that would be historically accurate and appropriate would be, again, I don't have an estimate that I can hand you. So I just want to let you know that typically it's 2.5 to 3 times the cost of what would be normal replacement windows.
So, more to the point of it, as opposed to hypothetical examples, and I understand those may exist. That my question, I probably should have phrased it a little bit more clearly. I apologize. Has anybody done an analysis? For example, someone say, all right, the fair market value currently without the designation would be X, the fair market value with the designation would be Y. Has anyone done that type of analysis?
On this house at this moment, no.
Okay.
Do I have an expert who does that work? Yes. Am I hoping to never have to engage such person to prove that point? I really hope I don't have to.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
thanks.
Commissioner Grimes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with questions? Okay.
Commissioner Grimes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So we'll now hear from the applicant's attorney. Sir, if you could start by identifying yourself, and I would ask you, Mr. Rosenzweig spoke for about 6.5 minutes. I ask that you do about the same at the upper level.
If not shorter, I agree. Good evening. My name is Adam Barsky. I am an attorney with Barrett's KBK in Philadelphia. I am also now a new resident of Bryn Mawr, so I'm happy to be here in this building. And coming from the Haddonfield Planning Board, where I sat for 3 years, I commiserate with you and I respect your purpose. We've all been there before. That said, we are here today to protect a very specific, very special type of property that was designed for the regular person within a developing community. The architect that we're discussing here is one of the quintessential architects within the United States at the turn of the century, with the Tudor style meeting the arts and crafts movement. We see a lot of his examples within the tri-state area, but what we don't see as part of the protected list are small residences such as the Ellis Avenue property that we're here to protect. Having looked and reviewed the past meeting minutes and the past submissions, I think we can all unanimously agree that this house does have historical significance. And we also can agree that there are deed restrictions, restrictive covenants upon the deed itself that serves to protect the property's historical significances in addition to the exterior facade, which is also within that restrictive covenant. Now, we won't get into the legalese of it, but the provision of providing this house with a title of Class 1 protected status really serves its intended purpose of the party's original intent. It essentially does not change the anticipated and permitted uses of the property, but gives it the credence that it's deserved for the past 100 years. Now, in terms of the expenses that are passed along to the property owner, based upon the evidentiary record and the past hearings, we have not seen any substance that Mr. Roberts is unable to pay for the renovations, for the preservation. We have not seen any applications to the Historic Commission for assistance. We have not seen any attempts to align with grant writers or individuals that my clients, who are the beneficiaries of the property's first right of refusal, have readily offered to provide pro bono to ensure that this property remains part of the community in its condition and current form. We've also seen that over the past few years, the property has gone into neglect, perhaps intentional neglect, in light of the property's historical significance and the difficulty it would be to demolish a structure. When half of the facade did fall off and remained on the ground for 2 years, Mr. Roberts consulted with my client's husband, who is now deceased, who is a historical preservationist, to assist with the masonry. So at all times, material here too, it was known by Mr. Roberts this house poses of such significant and historical purpose that it needs to prevail the test of time. We've also seen that the inhabitants of this property were also extremely significant, being the forefront of the feminist movement before that was even a thing, before women had the right to vote. We had two professionals who enlisted the help of a renowned architect to build their dream house with their character and their intent for them to live as a cohesive family in perpetuity. Meanwhile, one of the residents also created the rat that serves as the basis for every single medical study that currently exists through the present day. So, residents aside, the historical significance aside, we have not seen a bona fide reason as to why a private nomination cannot cause a property to be designated as a protected property with historical significance. The code does not prohibit private nominations from such, nor does it even mention the pros and cons of private nominations. Just because this hasn't happened in the past does not mean that it is not possible. We are also seeing the nomination from an individual whose parents owned this house, whose heirs and his children and his grandchildren will have an opportunity to possess this house in the historic condition that it was once in at the turn of the century. Now, we've heard council opine upon the costs incurred, for example, the replacement of the slate roof and how exorbitant the expenses will be. Frankly, that is not true. Aside from the fact that there are plenty of resources available to help with the maintenance of this property, the slate roof itself, if we're using that as an example, does not need to be replaced 100% in kind. It needs to pass the muster of the Historic Preservation Commission upon which they will give an advisory opinion that the work suggested will suffice and match its historical significance. So, as a collective whole, it's important to preserve Lower Merion's cultural history, its architectural significance, and certainly the identity of its citizens, those that were on the forefront of wild beliefs that are now common practice in the United States today. And for those reasons, this property is a shining example of why it should be included in the register, as not only are there deed restrictions, but it has passed 5 criteria, surpassing the mandatory 3 that is otherwise a barrier to entry in this type of property. And for those reasons, I believe it should be entered. I have with me individuals that are highly educated and experienced on historic preservation, on architecture, design, and as well as the legacy of the owners that once sold the property to Mr. Roberts.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions at this point? Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. Mr. Barsky, I'll try to ask you, if I may, a question with a similar intent that I asked Mr. Rosenzweig. You make reference that the owner is unable to, there's no evidence he's unable to pay for certain things. Do you have anything specific in the same fashion that I asked Mr. Rosenzweig, if there's been an analysis as to the difference between the value, the fair market value of this property under its current, we'll say, lack of designation versus if it were to be historically certified? Do you have any data on that one way or the other?
I will parrot his exact answer to you, that I know someone that can. Do I want to? No, but it is available if need be.
All right, so we're, the potential of each of the attorneys telling us that they may have experts that come out on the different side of the fence is what I think I'm hearing. But will you also talk about grant writers or or that somebody would provide something pro bono? Was there any analysis that was done as to what these grants would be applying for? Again, I'm searching for, economic specifics in order to help make an analysis, or when someone says, we'll do X pro bono, was that contribution of funds or contribution of time?
Right, and with me today I do have Ariel Harris, who is an architectural historian and former student of Aaron, whose family owned this property. She has actively engaged Mr. Roberts and has offered her services to take on this grant work, and I believe she may be the best source of this information here today.
Okay, so, all right, and then not to cut anybody off who wants to make a presentation, but if someone's going to say, all right, I have grant, application experience, which will always be vital if you're trying to get a grant, and they would offer that, then that's what you're stating she would be doing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. No need unless somebody wants to. I don't want to cut anyone off, but if that's the gist of it, I think we get it. Thank you very much, and Commissioner Grimes, thank you.
Sure. Good, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll move to public comment. Again, anyone who wishes to offer public comment can come up to that podium right there to your left. And again, we ask that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes. So.
My name is Lila Apple. I live in Wynwood in Ward 8, and I'm a junior at Lower Merion High School. I came here to advocate for the preservation of the house in Bryn Mawr that used to belong to Helen Dean King. Before I do that, I should state the obvious. I don't know very much about the law, I don't know very much about housing, and I don't know very much about historical preservation. Even so, I do want to speak briefly about one thing that I do know about, and that's the importance of recognizing and remembering the women who made outstanding advancements in their fields. One of these women is named Helen Dean King. As a girl who's interested in science, it's an issue that resonates with me. In fact, I wrote a piece about it in my school newspaper, advocating for the preservation of her house. Here's how I began that piece. The term lab rat is often used to casually refer to a person in an experiment, but it is derived from the actual use of rats in scientific studies. While it's important to only use animals for research when it is absolutely necessary, the use of rats in scientific labs has saved millions of human lives. The creator of the lab rat was American zoologist Helen Dean King. She lived in Bryn Mawr, not far from LM. She was a true scientific pioneer who overcame numerous obstacles that traditionally prevented women from contributing to science. While the adults in this room have the expertise to sort this issue out, I hope that, at very least, my comments are a reminder that a new generation of young women in LM would find it meaningful for the township to recognize her place in scientific history.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Harold Wilson, and I'm president of the Bryn Mawr Civic Association. And as I testified to you on your March 19th Building and Planning Committee meeting and my letter of April 24th regarding this, tonight the Civic Association is still opposed to the designation of 17 Elliott Avenue, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania as a Class 1 historic structure. We have discussed it in several of our meetings, and we still oppose it. We support its current owner and our neighbor, Thomas J. Roberts, in opposition to Class 1 status. Such a designation without the property owner's support would significantly limit his options for his future plans for the property. The township should have no role in the designation of a property without the consent of its owner. To do otherwise would be to usurp his private property rights. As presented at this meeting tonight, there are other price houses in the township with Class 1 status achieved with the support of its owners. That's appropriate and desirable. The rules and conditions weren't changed in the middle of an ownership. The purchase of a home is perhaps the most important financial transaction a person or family makes during a lifetime. The township should not be involved. Thank you for all your good work.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kathleen Aplano, and I serve as the Director of Historic Preservation at the Lower Merion Conservancy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First, I want to express our deep appreciation to the township staff for the comprehensive memo that they produced regarding this application, the clarifications that they provided about the history of the property, and the evolution of historic designation in the township, and the preservation language in the deed have been very helpful. So thank you in particular to Greg Pritchard for producing that memo. As you know from the last Building and Planning Committee meeting, the Conservancy supports the applicant and the Historical Commission in their determination that 17 Elliott Avenue not only meets the criteria for listing, but exceeds the township's criteria for Class 1 listing. Despite years of neglect, the property retains remarkable architectural integrity. Its distinctive character-defining features are important to this township. Its loss, whether by demolition, redevelopment, or continued neglect, would represent yet more erosion of Lower Merion's historic fabric. And that erosion is happening everywhere, quietly and steadily, in our dense traditional neighborhoods, in our business districts, in the remaining view sheds on our historic estates. Just last week, I was contacted by a concerned resident who was deeply troubled by the deteriorating condition of one of the towers, signal towers at the Bryn Mawr train station. That dates to 1898, and it is a tangible piece of Bryn Mawr's railroad legacy, and it should be preserved. And we couldn't agree more. Like the railroad tower and 17 Elliott, our older buildings lend immeasurable character to Lower Merion. In context, they tell our township's story. But the question is to you, to all of you tonight, how much do we value history? How much do we value the story of Lower Merion? And what are we prepared to do to protect it? We at the Conservancy recognize that in reviewing this Class 1 designation, the board must consider factors, or is permitted to consider factors beyond the listing criteria. We heard some of those factors discussed at the last hearing and tonight. Regardless of how you vote tonight, whether you approve or deny the recommendation, we respectfully and urgently appeal to you to please lead on this conversation. Please bring this issue to the forefront. Because until we have a real community-wide dialogue about preservation, we will continue to react, often too late, to threats, rather than proactively identify and protect the properties that define who we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Charles Davis, and I'm the president of Haverford Civic Association, and I live in Haverford. Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for your allowing me to speak. I'm here tonight both as a homeowner of Lower Merion Township, as well as my capacity as president of the Haverford Civic Association, representing the perspective of that civic body as well. First, in my capacity as president of the Haverford Civic Association, I would like to read a statement that was unanimously adopted by the Haverford Civic Association's board at its May 13th meeting. It was sent to you all on May 23rd and entered into the public comments on May 27th. It urges the commissioners to vote against the Historical Commission's recommendation to designate 17 Elliott Avenue as a Class 1 historical structure. The statement is as follows. It is the position of the Board of Directors of Haverford Civic Association that Lower Merion Township should not confer the Class 1 historical stature designation on a property against the wishes of the owner unless the township can demonstrate a compelling, i.e. overriding and extraordinary need, public purpose for doing so. We believe there is no such compelling need and therefore oppose assigning a Class 1 designation to the property at 17 Elliott. Second, speaking as a homeowner in Lower Merion Township, I would like to voice my personal opposition to the commissioners voting to unilaterally designate the house at 17 Elliott in Bryn, Mawr as a Class 1 historical structure against the wishes of the current owner. While I understand there may be times when it is necessary to override the wishes of a homeowner, particularly in the instances of general safety and security of the community, I would expect those instances would be rare and that the township should be required to show an overriding and extraordinary public interest in doing so, and then fairly compensate the homeowner for any loss of value. In my view, such a designation in this specific instance would significantly and unduly limit the property's owner's options for potential use, future use of the property, and would be on top of what the property's deed already stipulates. Should this unilateral designation on a private residence, again, against the wishes of the homeowner, be enacted by the township, I believe this would be a gross overreach by the township and would set a terrible precedent. With this in mind, I strongly urge you to reject the Historical Commission's recommendation to designate the class at 17 Elliott Avenue in Bryn Mawr as a Class 1 historical structure. Furthermore, I urge you to amend the town ordinance such that it would prohibit anyone other than the owner of the private residence to petition the Historical Commission to designate a property as Class 1 or Class 2 historical structure. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not a township resident. Do I have standing to speak? I'd like to bring an outside perspective. I'm an architect, been practicing for 40 years with a strong background in historic preservation, worked on many nationally significant buildings, and particularly a Will Price property in Rose Valley that's undergoing restoration currently. I'd like to say that the previous gentleman's comments and the comments along the lines of that this is an overreach to recognize a property like this over the objections of an owner. is not supported by the underlying laws in Pennsylvania and really historic preservation precedent nationally. It's done all the time. Maybe not in Lower Merion Township, but it's done for overall community values. The gentleman spoke two reasons, safety and something else. There's more to community perceptions than safety. I'd like to also say that historic designations increases values more often. If there's paper after paper reinforcing this and supporting it, frankly, people who appreciate a building like this, who would be the type that would buy it, who would recognize Will Price's significance, which I'll talk about in a sec, would appreciate that it's recognized, would be looking for that. And frankly, when I'm looking for a property, unless it is recognized, I have no interest in it. So I think that's not an appropriate argument. This house is at the edge where Elliott Avenue bends, and I think it's the bulwark, whatever, that defends a large residential area. If it's allowed to deteriorate by neglect and is replaced with a commercial building, that would be a major detribute to the community. I'd like to just say a word about, sorry, I'm not breathing very well, about the importance of this property. George Thomas, who wrote the book on furnace, Will Price taught 300 years of architecture history, teaches at Harvard and Penn, states that, and I think accurately so, and there's a new book coming out by others this year, that Will Price really is on par with Frank Lloyd Wright. He passed away young, therefore he didn't get the recognition, but to architects around the world, philosophically, how he approaches buildings, this is a stellar example of a stellar architect that this community should be supporting. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say, the young lady from Lower Merion School pointed out to me, the residents here were very important. It's an important story. And the fact that a young person like that comes up and speaks to you tonight, I think just that alone deserves your support. And thank you very much.
Sir, could you tell us your name, please?
I'm sorry. It's Douglas Seiler, Seiler.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
And I am offering pro bono services towards those who want me to help analyze the issues around this house.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Milroy, and I'm a resident of Belmont Hills. I live in a neighborhood of Lower Merion that is full of ordinary houses, and I'm speaking in strong support of the designation of 17 Elliott Avenues as a priority one property. I'm trying to find my notes here. As a Class 1 historic resource. And I would point out that I think the nomination details the history of the house persuasively. It makes the case for the historic significance. And I think we can't emphasize too much, as Ms. Apple very eloquently put it, that this was the residence of two pioneering women in the history of science. Also, I think I know and have driven past the house on numerous occasions. The current, I think that homeowners who take the time to educate themselves about designation learn that the staff of local, state, and federal agencies are on hand to advise on the selection of materials and methods, as has been pointed out. One or two studies, now 30 years old, suggest designation may decrease property values, but more recent studies have actually argued the opposite. And anyone who's experienced the substandard quality of contemporary construction methods will tell you that they wish they had purchased an older, well-built house, even one needing some repair. Renovations often utilize existing structures and materials, reduce waste, and the need for new resource extraction and manufacturing. Demolition, by comparison, creates significant waste and can contribute to pollution and habitat destruction. The point of historic preservation is to celebrate the many generations who have lived and worked in the exciting variety of structures that are in this township. Owners come and go in a generation. Houses stand for many decades as a sign of our past for our children and their children in the future. At a time when much of Lower Merion is suffering the proliferation of oversized, banal, and badly built apartment blocks and other structures, let's work hard to preserve the good buildings that give the main line its true character. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Hannah Stark, the Director of Policy and Communications at the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia, a nonprofit advocacy organization, and our service area covers 10 counties, including Montgomery. I speak tonight in strong support of adding 17 Elliott to Lower Marion's town.
Can you ask the speaker where she lives?
I'm
We're gonna-
representing our organization. Do you
She
need to
said
know
she's
my
from the
personal
Preservation
address?
Alliance.
We typically ask where speakers reside. Or if they
I do
reside.
not personally reside in the township, but as I stated, my
understand.
organization does cover this service area.
That's fine, go ahead.
I speak tonight in strong support of adding 17 Elliott to Lower Merion Township's historic resource inventory as a Class 1 resource. This property is architecturally and historically significant, reflecting both the work of a master architect and the evolving suburban landscape of Bryn Mawr at the turn of the 20th century. You've heard from others and seen the nomination of the significance of this building, so I'm not going to rehash the details. But your historical commission affirmed that this property exceeds the township's criteria for Class 1 designation, and the professional assessment was clear and unanimous. Class 1 designation is the township's strongest preservation tool, ensuring that proposed exterior alterations are reviewed for appropriateness and that demolition cannot occur without public process. This framework provides meaningful protection and transparency. While it has not been past practice in the township to designate individual residential properties over an owner's objections, there is nothing in the township's preservation ordinance that stipulates that owner consent is required. Historic preservation serves a public interest, as other commenters have said tonight, ensuring that sites of architectural, cultural, and historical importance are not lost to development pressures. This property is an irreplaceable part of the township's history, and its preservation aligns with Lower Merion's status as a certified local government and its commitment to protecting its unique character. On behalf of the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia, I urge the Board of Commissioners to adopt the Historical Commission's recommendation and designate 17 Elliott as a Class 1 historic resource. Thank you so much for your time and your continued commitment to the township. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to offer public comment? Go ahead. Someone should just come up, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Waters. This statement was submitted by Jeffrey Cohen, who's a professor at Bryn Mawr College. He didn't receive the Zoom link, so.
Excuse me, could you tell us where you live, please?
Oh, I live in Philadelphia.
Thank you.
But this is from a Bryn Mawr College professor. As the nomination researched and written by Ariel Harris and Aaron Wunsch elegantly establishes, 17 Elliott is an extraordinary house, one custom designed by a thoughtful architect specifically responding to the desires and identity of his client. It would have been great to have been a fly on the wall to eavesdrop on the formative conversations between architect and client in the late spring of 1900 that created this house. The result was an architectural portrait of what was for 4 decades an unconventional household of 2 independent women, a very high and hard-won academic achievement for this time. Women who, one can infer, wished to publicly and very distinctly present themselves to passersby rather than live behind a more conventional or more withdrawn architectural present purchased ready-made from a developer. While many immediately associate the design by Will Price with his pioneering arts and crafts work, which one might expect from him at that point at the dawn of the 20th century, in important ways it was closer to his late 1880s and early 1890s work, in which he worked fluently and inventively with legible historicist associations and precise emulated borrowed details, a leading late Victorian eclectic approach in those decades. Philadelphia architects were nationally acclaimed for this work, especially designs by 4 of the city's most prominent architects of that moment: Frank Miles Day, Walter Cope, John Stewardson, and Wilson Eyre. And Will Price's 1890s work shared much the same sensibility. This was one of the most carefully and purposefully conceived house designs in the tight village center of Bryn Mawr. Quite a different category than the great estate houses spreading out from the vicinity of the train stations that are usually the subjects of writing about mainline architecture. The Elliott Avenue cottage inhabits a smaller suburban house type, far less often the subject of architectural writing, and within that more constrained canvas expresses articulate visual testimony of its atypical clients' ambitions for presenting themselves, working with an extraordinary architect at a very significant formative moment in the town's evolution. The town center of Bryn Mawr would be a lesser place architecturally, and the rare testimony it offers of the lives of these two women and others in such households would become less visible, forcibly editing the history presented on the streets for the price of what could be a handful of parking spaces, a very poor bargain. In that spirit, I hope that township commissioners and staff can work together with those devoted to this house's survival and future, leaving sufficient time for identifying potential strategies, resources, and partners to make that happen. Pulling back to a wider view of historic preservation in Lower Merion, though one wonders if a policy of full deference to owners determined to see their building demolished, especially when existing evaluative procedures rate a candidate building at the highest levels of significance, well, that might not be a fully effective policy for preserving the rich architectural legacy of Lower Merion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susanna Baruco, and I live in Ardmore. And I'm not going to go into the, just say that we all can, I think, recognize that this property has historic value and significance and meets all the requirements of Lower Merion Township's ordinance and has been determined by your own historical commission to be worthy of designation. I want to just say two things briefly. Number one, just a reminder that we're making this decision today, but historic preservation, the preservation of the historic character of the township, that's a long-term decision. You have to think beyond the moment. This is for the future, right? For our children, our grandchildren. It's not for tomorrow. It's for 10, 20, 50 years from now. So I'd like to encourage you to think long-term when you make your decision on this designation. I sit on the Philadelphia's Committee on Historic Designation, and I've heard many comments from people about the economics of designation, why their property shouldn't be designated. I've been working as a preservation consultant for nearly 30 years, so I've been around the block. Preservation and the listing and the nomination of historic properties is a public process, and I find it, I have to say, just a little disconcerting that so much attention has been paid to the fact that an outsider has presented a nomination. And yet, when architects and engineers and developers come into our township and propose mammoth buildings and block the light, the light and air from our neighbors, not talking about zoning, but they can come in and build anything. I don't hear anybody coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh, they're an outsider. We don't want them coming in and making, doing their business in our township. I'm a little offended that preservation has to carry that burden in the conversation this evening, and I hope that you will try and look beyond that narrow view. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ariel Harris. I live in Philadelphia, but I was a former resident of this township when I attended Haverford College many years ago. But Haverford is where I cultivated my love for the history of architecture, in part due to having Will Price design buildings on our campus and taking classes with Jeff Cohen, whose testimony was just recited. I want to begin by thanking you again for the consideration of this very important house. And I'd like to thank the township also for its very detailed memo on the nomination. I believe I sent you all as well a memo with various grant opportunities and things like that. I'd be more than happy to answer questions about those on the record tonight. But I wanted to also make the point that while the township's memo was very well written, it presents things in a very negative light, and that was not the intent of presenting this nomination before you. I think there's a lot of hope in this building that remains, and I think the reality of the future of this building is way more hopeful than what is being presented tonight. We see a lot in the township memo why the property is a problem, why nothing can be done, no accommodations can be made, and kind of reads like a eulogy a little bit. It's a little disconcerting that we have a constituent's property being talked about this way to you all, because it is still occupied, and it still has value as an occupied structure, and I hope to see it remain an occupied structure for the long term. And in my memo, I presented multiple various opportunities and ideas to continue to make that a reality, whether or not the owner wants to sell now or sell in 20 years. I hope in my memo, too, you also received a confirmation from the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office confirming that the property is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. That would be the first step in obtaining a number of different grants, ranging from historic preservation tax credits, which requires a formal listing on the National Register of Historic Places, and by the way, does account for interior renovations. So interior renovations would have to be held up to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, should that avenue be pursued in the future. And avoiding your obligation to make a decision on this property, puts your status at risk as being a participant in Pennsylvania's Certified Local Government Program, which allows you to retain excellent historic preservation staff and maintain your inventory of historic places and do the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about the numerous pro bono services that I've presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll keep this short. My name is Dr. Jillian Galley, and I've come before you before, and thank you very much for patiently hearing this case over the last
Would you remind us
year.
where you live, please?
Sure. I live in Philadelphia, and actually I wanted to say that I live in Philadelphia, but like hundreds of Philadelphians, I come to Lower Merion regularly to spend money. My son goes to Friends Central School. I shop here regularly. My money contributes economically to this township in many ways, as do really hundreds and hundreds of Philadelphians. And, we could do the same genealogy. My husband, who was the co-nominator on this, the co-author on this nomination, was a student at Haverford College, and then his mother and grandmother were both teachers and students at Friends Central, Shipley, and Baldwin School. Lydia Vickers' mother, and this is actually not a Wunsch descendant, it's the Vickers property, so Mr. Rosenzweig got that incorrect. We're prominent and sort of dedicated members to this community educationally. Strong women for sure. And we actually see that in the deed restriction that Lydia Vickers crafted when she sold the house to recognize the historic nature of the property. So I agree with all that's been said. I'm not going to rehash that, but I do want to address a few key arguments that Mr. Rosenzweig made that were erroneous. For 20 years, my architectural colleagues, preservationists, have reached out to Mr. Tom Roberts to offer help, both physical labor on his building as well as their expertise. It started in actually the 2000s, early 2000s, when my husband returned to the Philadelphia area to teach at the University of Pennsylvania. We have reached out to him via phone, via email, and in person. Ariel Harris has done this as well, Dr. Jeff Cohen, Greg Pritchard, your own award-winning preservation planner, has tried to reach out and talk with Mr. Roberts, and Mr. Roberts will not engage. So while Mr. Rosenzweig seems to indicate he is open to having help and support, for 20 years he has not expressed that support, and there are emails to document this. And then I think, we heard earlier as well, but I just want to reiterate that a Class 1 designation does not require him to, as Mr. Rosenzweig said, replace a slate roof with a slate roof. It needs to be approved by the Historical Commission, but it does not have to incur the excessive financial costs that Mr. Rosenzweig indicated. Also, Mr. Roberts himself, if he had actually invested in the property slowly over time as the deed required, he would not be in this position. And finally, legally, the concern for Mr. Roberts is not the Class 1 designation, it's rather the deed covenants. And while I know you are not here to litigate, and I'm not asking you to do that, you should just know that his strongest legal concern and concern financially, what would sort of impact the value of his home, comes from that deed that he as a lawyer willingly signed in 1983. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the room to offer public comment? Okay. Is there anybody online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, so we will close public comment. And before we...
I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to offer a brief comment.
Okay, would you go over, please? Because I actually closed public comment, but I'll let you do it if you would walk over.
Okay.
I'm not... Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tom Normile. I'm a resident of Wynwood. I should also say that I'm a member of the Lower Merion Historical Commission, although I'm here tonight to speak strictly as Tom Normile. I've been struck by all the comments and the arguments. I have to say that comparing 2025 repair costs to a 1983 purchase price, any of us could cite that, whether it was about a car, about our doctor's visit, et cetera. So I think that's not the relevant thing here. I do think that personal property versus public good is the relevant question here. And I don't have a solution to that, but I know, and I feel strongly, and I think just about anybody here would feel that losing properties like this threaten the quality of the character, the quality of life and the character of our township. And I hope that you will all consider that carefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So before we turn it over for commissioner comments, so that we have a motion on the table, I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of a public hearing and intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter A180, Historic Resource Inventory, to add 17 Elliott Avenue, Bryn Mawr, to the Historic Resource Inventory as a Class 1 resource. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavrin. All right, we will now move to commissioner comments. Commissioner Zelov, you can start.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. First, I want to thank Greg for his memo tonight that was available to the staff back in when we first discussed this spring. It was balanced and thorough, even though it has been suggested otherwise. It's the second week in a row in which a staff memo has been criticized unfairly. The commissioners are empowered to consider conditions beyond the eligibility criteria that is used by the Historic Commission. We've been told that. And we all know that the Historic Commission is an advisory body. This committee, this Board of Commissioners, can and should consider other factors in making decisions, such as the owner's objections, such as the poor condition of the property, such as the financial inability to maintain the property. And outside of the historic districts that we have in the township, the commissioners have never listed a property in 25 years, since 2000 when this ordinance was enacted, over the objections of an owner. Many property owners over time who have larger homes and might properly be called mansions, which this one certainly is not, have objected and the commissioners have obliged. It's good government practice that we have a way of doing things that we continue to do, and we've heard tonight how strongly the owner objects. Are we going to require this owner to bear the burden of caring for a Class 1 resource so that everyone else can enjoy it? We need to be selective on any house we list. Historic preservation is good and vital in this township, but not every structure should be preserved just because it's old. Our code, from the beginning, has offered incentives for property owners to take advantage of the designation. And if they use the incentives, they have to put a facade easement on the property. And as Greg explained, that preserves the property. And nothing below that really does. We should use persuasion and incentives, not a sledgehammer. Over the summer, in this room, that occurred. It works. We had a property owner in another part of Bryn Mawr who willingly agreed to list his home as a Class 1. And our staff, and Greg in particular, get credit for that because they brought it up with him. And the owner was persuaded, and we listed that property as a Class 1. That is not happening here at 17 Elliott. There are at least seven other William Price homes in this property with some level of historic designation. This is not the property to change how we've done things from the beginning. It would be unprecedented. As was said last time, and then in some of the follow-up, it was suggested that Lower Merion Township somehow would not be leading in historic preservation. We all know that we do lead in historic preservation. We've had this ordinance for 25 years. No municipality can say that in this region. We do things in a consistent way, and we consider many factors, and Greg showed us there are over 1,100 structures and objects, 1,100 in this township that are designated. To suggest otherwise, it's just not correct. And then we heard, I don't know what else to call it, a threat that we somehow might use our certified local government category. Our manager, who I spoke with a moment ago, said that's just not going to happen. Now, the tie I'm wearing, in case you didn't notice, is from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I support historic preservation in this township where it makes sense and have consistently done so in my long time on this board. We should consider closing the gap in our code when a non-owner can apply for another person's home to have it listed as historic. And then that person can advocate on social media around the country about that property. It's scary for homeowners to think that may somehow happen to them and that someone else can list their property. This board received a letter last week from Heidi Hayes, who lives around the corner from this property in Bryn Mawr. She and her husband are classically trained singers, freelance professionals. But their son chose to be a chemical engineer. She writes, let's imagine that our son, the chemical engineer, finds a solution to a major environmental challenge. Let's say he figures out how to solve the current challenge of microplastics in our environment. Let's say in a decade or so, others from outside of Lower Merion Township also think he has done great work and that his boyhood home should be historically preserved. She writes, it's possible that our home could be perceived by some to be of historic value, but not because of the structure, but because of our son's contributions to the world. But in a decade, at the age my husband and I will be, it means it's possible that having our home designated as historic without our approval could present a significant hardship to us. Having those with interests from outside Lower Merion Township put our lifelong home up for historical designation could prove to be a financial burden we could not support. I strongly oppose allowing non-residents to nominate homes for historical designation above the wishes of the homeowner and the local community, writes Heidi Hayes of Bryn Mawr. Now, we've also heard tonight, as we did in March, that there might be those who can assist and those who can provide grants. It's been 7 months. 7 months for those things to be brought forward. I'm not aware that they have. So I will go back to what was offered in the beginning, which was a surprise to all of us, I think. If the costs to renovate, to improve this property, to be in the requirements of a historic designation are so much lower than represented at the beginning tonight, then the offer has been made for those who think that to buy the property at fair market value. And so one final observation, I believe that the owner of the property has engaged with Greg Pritchard, not in the very beginning, but since then, about his property and what is available, if anything, to assist him. So I encourage my colleagues to oppose this listing of 17 Elliott on our historic inventory. Thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Commissioner Gavin.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. This is a tough one. This is where we earn our really high salaries. Things, issues like this. Not all the time do we. A lot of times we're unanimous. This is one where reasonable people can have different opinions, and I think we're going to see that tonight. That there's a number of different opinions. I don't think there's a right, there's a wrong. This is one that's really tough. Clearly, this residence meets the requirements of a historic home. As Mr. Wilson said and Commissioner Zeloff said, there are a number of other priced properties in this township are Class 1. This is very different from that example that was brought up in the letter. It's not just a question about the resident. It's actually a question, it's both the resident, as Ms. Apple wonderfully stated earlier, it's the resident here and the architect as well. So this is a really unique situation where you have both a really important resident and an important architect. I walk by this house a lot. This is a special property. The hard part on this is that the owner does not approve of designating it. I think that's clear, that's been clearer, that's really the issue. Nobody is saying it's not important, nobody's saying it's not a wonderful property. It's really a question of, will we override the wishes of the property owner? And that's really hard to do. I don't want to minimize that. I also, the last speaker said, losing properties like this impact the character of this township. And I truly believe that. I think that is really what makes Lower Merion special. A lot of it is this wonderful architecture that we have in this township and these amazing historic properties. The 123 Class 1, yeah, we have 1,100 total designated, but really it's the Class 1 properties, the 123 Class 1 properties that really, in my mind, make this township special. The fact that this was not on the original list of properties when they were looked at really doesn't carry much weight with me. I know later on we're going to hear about Oakwell, which also wasn't on that list, and I think everyone in this township agrees, what we've seen over the last couple of years, how important that property is. Just because it was missed on a list early on doesn't mean it's not important. Normally, I would struggle, and I do struggle with overriding the wishes of an owner of a property. I think there's a couple of mitigating factors here. One is that the owner knew that this was a historically important property. That, the regulations in the deed are not relevant to this discussion over whether it's Class 1, but to me it's very relevant in knowing what what this property was, what this owner was getting into, that he was buying a historically important property. And there was conversation tonight also about over time that he consulted with those in the know about maintaining it properly for a historic property. So this is not a situation of coming in and kind of blindsiding an owner. I don't think that's the fact here. I agree with Ms. Alplenau when she said earlier that we need to be more proactive than reactive. I don't like this process at all. I don't like the fact that this one house was singled out. I don't like that it came from a nomination from outside the township, but I don't think that's dispositive. I think we do need to have a comprehensive review of our properties, see what's historic, and really go through a process to make sure that we're doing that the right way and not getting these one-off, applications coming in. So, that said, I think Mr. Davis had said there's a really high burden to designate a property over the objection of the owner, and I think he's absolutely right. And the question is, do we meet that high burden? In my mind, I think we do. I think we have a case where the owner knew that it was a historic property. I think we have a very important architect. We have a very important resident. And when you take all of those factors together and really, ensuring the character of this township, in my mind, that does meet that very high burden. So I am inclined to support this nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Oh, Commissioner Epstein, thank you.
This has been a really long process, and I'm not an architect, I'm not a lawyer, and I've learned so much, which has been great. The story that's been told within this house is a fantastic story. It's not locked up in the house's walls, though. The story of the residents, what they accomplished, what they represent, should be told. That can be separate from this being designated a Class 1. In making these decisions, you kind of wish everyone would just get along. I wish there was a solution that made everyone happy. That doesn't seem to work here. And for me, I struggle with placing the burden on the family whose home it is now. It has been a family home for a long time. And that family story is important too. So even though it's difficult to say so, I would not support it because I feel like that burden is a huge burden, and I don't know that we should have that right. But I think we've all said it, we should look at this holistically and not be taking these as one-offs. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnham.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. And first, appreciation to everybody who's spoke here this evening and those that have been sending us their viewpoints for a period of time. There's no doubt in my mind, on whatever side of the fence you are in this issue, that everybody does so in good faith and with the belief that they are doing something that they think is appropriate. And I state that in that while I listen to Commissioner Zeloff, I don't completely agree with him. I don't think that the private property owner's objection is the ultimate 100% of the time trump card in making the determination. However, its significance cannot be underestimated in any stretch of the imaginations. So historically, the concept of certifying properties as historic used to be considered a taking. And the Pennsylvania Constitution provides within it that in the protection of property, the exact language I may have, that when it talks about property, says in Article 1, Section 10, nor shall private property be taken or applied to public use without authority of law and without just compensation being first made or secured. That clause was taken up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in 1993 on the heels of a U.S. Supreme Court decision of 1991 indicating that in Philadelphia, where there was designation of a property, that it did not constitute a taking, and that therefore there was not the requirement to go ahead and compensate. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court took a look at that, Won't go through all the history of what they went back to 1776 as to the Pennsylvania Constitution and the law and the decisions which came out and predicated upon decisions regarding environmental security and designations of property. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court then stated that this would not constitute a taking which necessarily required there to be some form of compensation. The concurring opinion starts out that although I remain firmly committed to the proposition that the effects of a historic designation of private property without the consent of the owner constitutes a taking and requires just compensation under our Constitution, both federal and state, yet nevertheless they concur with the opinion. I share the concurring justice's view of this actually, in reality, being a taking. However, we are bound by the laws as dictated by the Supreme Court, whether we agree to it or not. And as I said a couple sentences ago, while the desires of the homeowner wasn't the litmus test, it was extraordinarily important. And that is why I asked each of the attorneys who came here and spoke on behalf of the different versions, what data can you provide regarding the economic consequences of this certification? And neither were able to provide specifics. They stated each did have in their stables a potential expert to testify. Those like myself who are commercial litigators and have been in courtrooms with such experts that are out there, and they're now all going to get mad at me. They're known as MAIs, or as members of appraisal institutes. And as us lawyers might state in the back room, MAI could also be known as made as instructed. So hearing that there are two competing experts does not surprise me at all. But it also doesn't help. Because the problem that I possess in this approval is that we're being asked to do it blindfold. We do not know what the consequences will be at all that we are seeking to place upon a current property owner. And being asked to do something without that vital piece of information is something that I'm not prepared to do. So Commissioner Zeloff noted some of his own personal background, and I can attest that he has always been very, very diligent in supporting historic resources and protecting them. So I'll give you just a drop of my own in order to make this relevant. The Bala Theater came up for Historic One certification. I had to recuse myself from voting because I represent the owners. And before it came up, we did an analysis. What will be the cost to the Bala Theater should it go up for sale as a result of this historic certification? And what was the significance to the township knowing what this building was and where it was? It was analyzed so that, without breaching any attorney-client privilege, the decision was made given the public interest, notwithstanding that which would be a significant cost. I underline the word significant, not to contest it. The Bala Theater is now Class 1 historically certified property in the heart of Bala Cynwyd. So I point that out in that having data is, to me, essential before imposing upon a property owner unknown costs. We don't have that data for me to be confident enough to go ahead and make this vote, albeit I thoroughly appreciate each and every argument as to why this should be a historic one resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners wish to comment? Okay, I'll offer some comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Kramer, I didn't see your hand up.
I find myself in substantial agreement with Commissioner Gladwyne. And I have struggled with this issue and researched it as well, and I keep coming back to some language in the deed, which is grantor and grantees acknowledge that the here and above described premises have historical significance as an example of the architectural design and construction of the noted Philadelphia architect William L. Price, and also put a series of restrictions on it, not enormously different than what we're being asked to do. And this is signed by Mr. Roberts. So I've struggled with this. I've tried to find some rationale not to be persuaded by this, and I can't find it.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, let me offer some comments just as final commissioner on this. Historic preservation is important in this community. In fact, our township code declares as a matter of public policy that the preservation and protection of buildings, structures, and sites of historic merit are public necessities and are in the interests of the health, prosperity, and welfare of the people of Lower Merion Township. If that sounds familiar, we heard the same thing last week about leaf blowers and protecting people's health. It doesn't say that it only matters it's only a matter of important public policy if a resident makes an application, nor is there anything in our law about residents making applications. Our historic code was enacted, I think, 40 years ago, was amended as recently as 2020 when we had an opportunity to limit applications to residents and chose not to. And it isn't like we're just pulling an issue out of the air, because we have had applications come up from non-residents before. We've also had applications that people have opposed. And Commissioner Zelov is absolutely correct that as a matter of practice, we have not moved forward applications, and I would say largely also commercial properties that the owner objected to, but that again is a matter of practice, and I think that that's not always been a good policy. When we have these discussions, we often cite La Ronda, which some of us will remember. Forgive me for citing it again, but it's a great example of an important property in this township that we lost because it was not protected. We have also, and I understand that right-thinking minds can disagree, we lost the opportunity to largely preserve the WCAU building on City Avenue, which had a lot of merit. Maybe not the most attractive building in the world, but had a lot of importance, and it's still standing in some form, but not in its historic character because the owner did not wish it to be designated. And so I don't know that it's always the best policy to do that. It is undoubted that people want to live in a historic area. Just today, I went on to Realtor.com, and I got one in front of me for a property on South Merion Avenue in Bryn Mawr that's within a few minutes walk of this property, where in the first sentence they say, experience the perfect blend of convenience, comfort, and style with this sophisticated townhouse nestled in the historic area of Bryn Mawr. Why do they say that? It's a realtor saying it. We all know that realtors only tell the truth. And they said it because it helps sell. It puts value. Many of us like this community because of that. This board voted to spend extra money on a fence outside the Bryn Mawr train station in the parking lot recently because the fence had historic value and enhanced the neighborhood. And I would also add it was the right thing to do, but we did it because we recognize that. If we don't preserve properties, we get overdevelopment, we get proliferation of houses that overwhelm their sites, and less desirability for the township and for the immediate community. Others, Commissioner Gavin has spoken about, issues about designating over the owner's objection. As he said, and I agree, that makes this a very difficult decision. but again, not against our law. And again, I'm not sure that it's something we've extensively discussed even on the time that I've been on the board. Also, this property clearly, as others have said, qualifies for designation and for Class 1 status. So I think that argues, notwithstanding the residents' objections, for designation. I do find some of the discussion about not designating not particularly persuasive for me. In particular, I find really regrettable, although I'm not suggesting people say this not well intended, but automatic statements and assumptions that designated a property ruins the value or diminishes the value of a property. I think it is of a property's value. Maybe designation has some factor in it, but there are lots of other factors. There's a property in my ward on Maple Hill Road that was a Class 2 property, a big mansion that was done by Durham, I think is the architect's name. Very well-known property. About 15 years, on 30 or 40 acres. About 15 years ago, someone demolished the property, spent $30 million building a new house on that property. And then they tried to sell that house they spent $30 million on within the next 10 years, and it sold for, I believe, $9 million. Brand new house. Wasn't because it was designated, because it was no longer designated. But I only bring that up because I'm not sure that there's any evidence that, particularly because people want to live in historic areas, that just designating a property is determinative in diminishing value. Also, I also agree with what others have said, when there are statements, well, if this is subject to the Historical Commission and their edicts, that's going to make someone do something that they can't afford. I think that it's pretty apparent for those of us who follow what our Historic Commission does and our HARB, that they look at each property separately, and they look at what's feasible, they look at what's appropriate, and they make decisions. I don't know that we have heard, I can't think of an example now, of where an owner has come to us and said, the Historic Commission was so difficult on what they wanted that I can't afford to do it. And even if they did, there's a mechanism for making an application for hardship in that situation. But again, I can't recall a time when that came up. So, sort of to sum this up, I think if we do not designate, this could go either way, this matter. But if we don't look at this this property individually, and if we say that we're never going to designate properties against the owner's wishes, we are going to come up with gaps in the housing in important parts of this township. Historic property here, non-historic property here that probably doesn't really work in terms of the historic properties, but looks good to whoever bought it and did the construction. We're going to get a hodgepodge instead of a cohesive neighborhood. I think in the case of this property, I'm not sure what we're going to get. Frankly, I hope, given what we've heard, that if someone wants to buy it, that they will buy it and preserve it. But I think that if it's not preserved, what we're likely to end up with possibly is a parking lot, given the business that's next door and given other part where this property sits. And I'm not sure that that's advantageous to people and to the community also either. So, again, as I've already said, oh, by the way, the other thing I should say, just going back, and forgive me because I know you all want to hear me talk for 10 more minutes. The other thing I should say is that we've heard, we've heard that if it's designated, there'll be a lot of maintenance required. What I have not heard is how much maintenance I mean, this property needs maintenance anyway, such that a few years ago, the township had to enforce against this property, and I'm not convinced that the amount of maintenance required to maintain this property's historic fabric would increase the cost to this owner over what this owner may have to still do to maintain the property in general. So I think it's important to note that property maintenance isn't zero if we don't designate, but there's likely to be things done. So in sum, I am going to, by the way, tonight we're just talking about advertising. I am going to support the advertising of this ordinance. After we advertise, this will come back. I think Commissioner Bernheim is correct in saying that there's other important information that could be brought forward to this board. I would note, since Commissioner Bernheim was good enough to talk about inverse condemnation in different words, that according to the courts, as I understand it, it is up to the property owner to prove that a designation would amount to an inverse condemnation. So as much as we're suggesting either any party could bring that information, I think it'd be more helpful if the property owner would provide that. But for purposes of tonight, I am going to vote to advertise, and I ask my colleagues to consider that as well. So thank you. So, although I intended to be the last comment, if anyone who hasn't spoken. All right, so we have a motion on the table. We will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion to advertise, please raise your hands. 1, 2, just 3. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the motion fails. Thank you. All right.
Mr. President, I believe the vote was 8-3.
Okay,
Yes.
is that what you got?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we will move on. Thank you for those who came tonight on that matter. We're now moving on to number 2 on the agenda, the authorization to advertise for the noise enforcement amendments. Mr. Pendleton, if he is he here? Oh, he's out there. By the way, for those who are interested, this is on page 16 of the agendas. Everyone's leaving. My speech made everyone go to the bathroom.
I was asleep, so I'm surprised there were as many members. I thought it'd be closer.
Was I right?
Yes.
Okay. But thank you for that, because that was a compliment. Thank you.
It was.
Whenever you gentlemen are ready. Mr. Pendleton, I assume you want to make a few comments, so you're welcome to do that. Whenever.
Yes, sir. I'm going to give a little quick...
And welcome, since we don't normally get to hear from you.
Thank you. I just want to give a quick little background as to why we're asking to amend the noise ordinance, or Chapter 105. So the last time we amended this section of the code was in 2004, April 2004. And in the year since the regulation was adopted, our staff has evaluated the effectiveness of the noise regulation. As part of this evaluation, we did consider questions we got from some of the civic groups and from some of your board members. We also consulted with Rutgers University Noise Technical Assistance Center, where members of our staff took a course and received a community noise enforcement certification. At that time, our staff also took the opportunity to review our code with the director there. The important thing about this certification is it gives our enforcement staff, it ensures the necessary expertise and legal understanding to effectively apply the code, which in some cases we did not have when it came time to write citations. So the bottom line is the proposed amendment slightly lowers the maximum sound levels and clarifies some of the wording in the charts on 105.3. So for beginners, I know there were some questions about using the background noise as a baseline. So this amendment will continue to use the background noise as a baseline, which we found to be done in the base code, in the model code they had also. There are a number of different ways you can do it, but that was one of the ways, so we decided to keep that there, while permitting maximum increase of 5 decibels over the background noise, up to a maximum of what's in the chart in 105.3. So if we look at the chart, which is up here, 105.3, the changes we did were, if you look where it says maximum impulsive now, we took out the word maximum because we felt like that was causing confusion, the wording there, maximum and average, and replaced them with impulsive and continuous. We also lowered the daytime decibel level for residential from 70 to 65, which was more in line with the model code that New Jersey uses and the Institute pushes for. The impulsive sound at 75 is 10 decibels lower than the model code. So we're actually lower than the model code. The model code, I believe, used 85 decibels there. Everything else stayed the same. We also added definitions for impulsive sound and continuous sound, just to clarify the wording. So impulsive sound is a sound lasting less than 1 second. So it's like a spike in the noise level. Continuous sound is a sound lasting longer than 1 second, or an impulsive sound that happens more than 5 times in an hour. That being said, that's the basics of it. That's all we've changed.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Pendleton? Go ahead, Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Is this ordinance going to affect the firehouses that use sound to announce?
No, emergency alarms and signals are exempt.
Okay.
I have one question myself. I noted in your memo there was discussion about staff training and things like that. In my experience, there's frequently violations or alleged violations of the noise ordinance during the nighttime hours, meaning 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Is the department taking steps to educate those who enforce during the nighttime how to implement with these new rules?
We did have a conversation with our police department after taking this course, and based on what we learned, without that certification and without knowing how to make adjustments for the noise levels and the equipment you're using, it would not be appropriate for the police to come out, because that's who's going to respond after business hours and take decibel readings. However, we had decided that the police, who can use Chapter 11 of our code, which is peace and good order, can use the plainly audible version of it. Just they can come out and decide whether the noise they hear is causing a disruption to the neighborhood and write a citation. So they don't need to take a reading in order to regulate it.
So is that's under the same law though, right? Just to be clear, under
different code. They would be using a different section of the code. Now, I do also know that Superintendent Block had mentioned, or one of his lieutenants, maybe sending some police officers to take this course, because when we took this course, the majority of the people in the class were police officers from other townships.
Okay, but it's still if a policeman comes out, it's still the noise ordinance that they're enforcing, right? Or
no, they're enforcing.
So it would be would it be
disorderly? It's not disorderly. Peace and good order. It's Chapter 111 of our code, of the Law Merion Code, called Peace and Good Order.
Okay, we're just voting to advertise this tonight, so.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna give you a break and I'm not gonna ask you more on that. Go ahead, Commissioner Woodring.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. All right, so we were looking at neighborhood level of background noise. Is there a reason we did away with that specifically?
We haven't. We did testing into different neighborhoods at night and during the daytime to come up with averages.
Okay.
And that's what, that's kind of, we're not using those numbers. We're using the background noise. So the neighborhood doesn't matter, it's the background noise, which allows a quiet neighborhood to stay quieter. For instance, our old code would allow you to go up to, let's say 65, I can't remember what it was, decibels. What if you're in a neighborhood where the background noise is only 40 decibels? So instead of going up to 65 decibels under the old code, the new code will only allow you to go up to 45 decibels, 5 over the background noise. So it allows quieter neighborhoods to stay quieter.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Let me move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 105, Noise and Exterior Lighting, by adding definitions for continuous sound and impulsive sound, and to apply those definitions to the chart providing maximum A-weighted sound pressure levels in residential and non-residential zoning districts. Commissioner Woodring is seconding. Thank you. We will now go to public comment. Is there anyone here to offer public comment? Please go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name is Valerie Holliday. Can you hear me okay? I'm a resident of Ardmore, and I'm also an officer in the Ardwood Civic Association. I'm actually the secretary, and I'm also the chair of Ardwood's Noise Ordinance Committee, also known as informally as Team Noise. And I'm here just to read a statement that you all would have received from us last week, and I will be brief. This September 5th and 10th of this year, Lower Merion Township staff published an advance release of their issue briefing and new draft amendments to Chapter 105 of the Noise Ordinance Code. The Ardmore Civics welcome these proposed amendments. The issue briefing and draft amendments successfully address the community's primary concerns. Staff attended the Rutgers University's Noise Technical Assistance Center program. The Rutgers program's expert was consulted about amendments to the 2024 version of Chapter 105. Maximum sound pressure level limits have been significantly lowered, and a clear distinction between impulsive versus continuous sounds replaces the previous sound pressure level categories. We believe the changes will make both compliance and enforcement more straightforward and result in a quieter environment for residents. The Ardmore Civics support these modifications to the noise ordinance and encourage the Board of Commissioners to vote in favor of advertising and as well as subsequent adoption. And lastly, we wish to thank the Board of Commissioners for approving the staff's enrollments in the Rutgers program, and really do appreciate the staff's participation as well as all their hard work preparing the draft amendments to Chapter 105. Additionally, we would like to thank the Board of Commissioners Noise Ordinance Subcommittee and its chair, Vice President Sean Kramer, for hearing Ardmore Civics concerns and keeping the civics and the public informed of progress. Thank you for the opportunity to give these comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to offer public comment? Okay, thank you. Are there any commissioners who wish to offer? Vice President Kramer.
I just want to thank Ardwood Civic and the captain of Team Noise, Val Holliday, for the thoughtful suggestions that you made to improve this ordinance, and thank you to Mr. Pendleton for considering those recommendations and for attending the training and making the changes that you did in the ordinance. I think we're all better off for having worked together on this, and it'll make things quieter and better for the whole community. So thank you all.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? I can't see Commissioner Stevenson, so I'll just assume that's giving me the X. Okay, so we will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Is Commissioner Stevenson still with us?
No.
Okay.
I mean, he's there, but he's not.
Okay, so fair enough. Okay, so
And I
the motion,
do, unfortunately, now have someone who has raised their hand on Zoom.
Oh.
Who did not have their hand raised when you were doing.
well, we've already taken the vote, so, I mean, although, okay, we can let them talk if they want, but we're not going to revote.
Okay, I have Adrian Seltzer.
I thought you were suggesting we listen to them, I'm sorry. I was going to give you deference.
I mean, I'd rather if we make an error, it's by listening to somebody as opposed to not doing it. I
Yeah.
tend to doubt it's going to cause us to say, let's revote.
Right.
But, we'll listen to them anyway.
Right,
Okay, here she comes.
that's what I thought you were indicating.
You were correct.
There we go.
Hi, Adrian Seltzer, Winwood. I did not hear you say, is anybody on Zoom? So, or request comments. But all I wanted to say is I just want to commend the work of the township and especially Ardwood Civic and Valerie Holliday, who did so much work on this noise ordinance. And I just wanted to give her kudos. It is my Civic. You don't have to change your vote. It's just I wanted to give her kudos. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Seltzer. There's no one else, is there? Okay, so we will move on. I trust that her comments didn't impact anyone's vote. We will now move on to the next matter, the tentative sketch plan for Waverly Heights, 1400 Waverly Road. So, Mr. Doyle, I gather you have a brief presentation, and just to either allay people's concern or else dash maybe hopes that Waverly Heights has, I assure you that Waverly Heights still is in Ward 2, not Ward 6, notwithstanding what it says on the agenda.
Apologies for that.
To the extent no one else picked up on that, never mind. So go ahead, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. As you stated, I'm presenting the Waverly Heights application. While this is a 63-acre property, the limit of disturbance is roughly about 3 acres of land. There are 3 buildings that are proposed. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen here, buildings 1 and 2 are both identical buildings with 12 units. And then the third building itself is also with an extra 12 units. The difference here is that buildings 1 and 2 have residential units for without care without extensive care for the residents, while the third building there has the independent living units that are separately different from the types of units proposed. As well, there's also outdoor amenity space that's proposed. It's about 7,000 square feet, and it's located a little south of the proposed development here. Here's some images of the proposed development. At the top, you'll see that area that would be proposed for the commons area. Again, 7,000 square feet. Currently has steps going up to the court for the amenity space area. At the below left-hand side, the image depicts the 7 units that will be demolished in lieu of one of the buildings there. And then on the right side is the additional area where that 3-story building will be proposed. One of the issues with this property is the topography. So the Planning Commission and staff both work together to address some concerns about connectivity, pedestrian experience, vehicular movements, and doing such, the Planning Commission came up with an additional condition here, which is nothing more than improving the common space between those 3 buildings that are proposed in order to improve the pedestrian experience. And again, working with drop-off and ensuring that things are smoothly designed. So to illustrate that, on the right-hand side of the screen here, again, is another condition that the staff had previously proposed that addresses much of the same concerns that were addressed before the Planning Commission made their additional condition. As you can see, there's some areas that we thought could be improved, and working with the applicant to make sure that they're designed properly. With that being said, all the conditions were presented to the applicant, who I believe is here, and has accepted those conditions.
Great, thank you. So as you noted, the applicant is here. If the applicant would like to make any brief comments, Ms. June, if you'd like, you can come over to that side if you want, a little closer.
Good evening, Jamie Jen here. Like Mr. Doyle just stated, all of the recommended conditions of approval are agreeable to us. The team is here, however, if there are any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. So before we go to public comment, do any commissioners have any questions for either Mr. Doyle or for the applicant? I see none, so thanks. Let me put a motion on the table. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a tentative sketch land development application, plan prepared by Bowler Engineering dated February 12, 2025, with last revision on September 19, 2025, as set forth in our agenda. Madam Secretary, if that works for you, so I don't have to read the whole thing. No, we have not done that yet. We will in a moment. Is that a second? Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. Okay, we will now move to public comment. If anyone wishes to make public comment, please go to the podium over there, identify yourself, the community you live in, and you'll have approximately 3 minutes.
No, it didn't. I was setting it.
No, you're
I was setting it.
Got a quick trigger finger, but not that.
Before I make my remarks.
Ma'am, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Barbara Gilmore, and I live at Waverly Heights.
Thank you.
All right. But before I make my remarks, I noticed on the agenda that there is an area, a statement that I don't think is quite accurate. Is this appropriate a time to mention that, or are you going to take it off of my time? Under additional reviews in your agenda, that the presentation on Waverly.
Well, ma'am, you have about 3 minutes. If it's on this agenda item, you've got about 3 minutes to make whatever comments you would like to make.
Then I'll have to write you a letter. Okay. I've been a resident of Gladwyne and Waverly Heights since the end of 2013, having moved here from out of state. I've lived in several states amid both good and bad development, and I believe Waverly's proposed expansion to be bad development. I am opposed to it. The years since its origin in 85 or 86 shows a trail of continuing and contentious expansion, which, if this project goes forward, I believe will result not only in overdevelopment now, but also lead to further development in the future to the detriment of the entire area. Just such a thing the neighbors' agreement tried to prevent, just such a thing that is possible under current zoning and regulations. I have 3 issues of major concern. Overcrowding. There are 3 aspects to this: people, cars, and units. You have probably been told that we have 270 residents, whereas the total census is around 350 plus, and plus the residents plus their many aides. I don't believe the infrastructure will support another estimated 50 residents and however many aides they may have. With respect to the number of units allowable, in 2005, the commissioners agreed to not count assisted living units toward the maximum allowable units per acre. There is apparently no limit on the number of such units. We have 49 such units fitting the definition of dwelling unit that, if counted, would put Waverly at 267 units, 20 units over the allowed number. I believe that 2005 agreement should be revisited. In environmental impact, this project will have a severe and permanent impact on the physical property. I'm sorry. You want me to wrap up, or may I continue? I only have a few more paragraphs.
It's about 30 more seconds. Go ahead.
All right, there's an environmental impact, and there are health risks. And I'll skip to the health risks because I think they're significant. Harvard Medical Magazine cites studies that show health effects include hearing loss, tinnitus, cardiovascular disease, memory impairment, and other diseases. I see no effort by Waverly to mitigate the construction noise, especially for those residents living within 200 feet. One would think a continuing care community would be sensitive to this. Finally, the residents are told Waverly's focus is now on growth and expansion. I believe this project is opening the door to what is becoming an apartment complex in the middle of lovely individual homes, as Waverly knocks down more cottages to be replaced with multi-unit apartment buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to offer public comment on this matter? Is there anyone online?
No one has their hand raised online.
Okay, so since this is in my ward, I'm just going to start with the comments on this one. With respect to the resident who just commented and whose comments I've heard before, I would wholeheartedly endorse the approval of the tentative sketch plan. Waverly Heights has presented this plan to the Gladwyne Civic Association on 2 different occasions over several months. And when they had a decent attendance at the Civic, and with the exception with the small exception, there have been no concerns, and I've heard no concerns with this plan. The plan is within the permitted number of residences that is allowed under Waverly Heights agreement with the neighbors, with its immediate neighbors. These homes will not be visible from Waverly Road or any other public street. It's totally internal, and Waverly Heights there is a demand for senior housing in our township, and Waverly Heights in particular has a significant wait list. And while that's normally not our concern, I think that when they present a plan that will allow them to have more units with no adverse impact on the community and no cost to the township, I think it's certainly something that should be endorsed. So I'm pleased to endorse this motion and hope that my colleagues will support it. Are there other commissioners who wish to comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next matter is the number 4, petition to amend the Lower Merion Township zoning code and zoning map. This relates to 1835 County Line Road and 330 Spring Mill Road, otherwise known, 1800 West Montgomery and 1829 County Line Road, otherwise commonly known as the Stoneleigh property. This is on page 50, starts on page 52 of the agenda. Ms. Hall, I think you have some introductory comments.
Yeah, I just have some brief comments that I'd like to go over. Thank you very much. Natural Lands Trust is the applicant for this project. They are requesting on behalf of Stoneleigh to do two things. There's a text amendment in Article 5, which is the Table 5.3 for the Institutional Nature Preserve. I'll go through the details, minor details of the text amendment that they would like to bring forward to us. The second part is the actual rezoning of what we're calling the Stoneleigh expansion parcel. I just would like to let you know that this is the first step in multiple applications that you're going to be seeing before you in the next coming months. Currently, Natural Lands Trust has a preliminary lot line change pending, and they also have a tentative sketch application pending before us. We'd like to bring them all together. We needed to bring the authorization for advertising 1 month before so we could get them all on the agenda in November. So that's why we're seeing this out of order, but this is the first step. Let me just go through quickly the request for the rezoning. Like I said before, the current parcels that are before you, the Oakwell parcel is parcel B and C currently. It's one 10-acre parcel and one 3-acre parcel. This is on the left here is the current configuration of it, and then Stoneleigh is parcel A, which is actually 42 acres. When they do the lot line change, they're requesting to move 7.3 acres over to Stoneleigh to be consolidated into their main parcel, and the entire parcel of 1800 West Montgomery, which is a 3-acre parcel. I want to bring that to your attention because what is actually being asked to be rezoned is just the 7.3 acre parcel, which is the Oakwell, the Stoneleigh expansion, and then the back parcel of the 1800 West Montgomery parcel. When that lot line change is approved, the rezoned parcels will be consolidated into the Stoneleigh estate, which is already zoned IN right now. So the request for the rezone, the current properties are zoned LDR1. They're requesting to have those parcels zoned IN, Institutional Nature Preserve. Again, as I stated before, the 7.3 acre Stoneleigh expansion parcel and the entire 3.3 acre parcel at 1800 West Montgomery. The remaining 3.3 acre parcel, which is where the Oakwell mansion is, will remain zoned LDR1. There's no proposed change for that property. It will remain the LDR. Will not be part of the rezoning. So let's get into the text amendments. There's 3 basic things that they're asking for the text amendments. It's in Article 5, like I mentioned before, Table 5.3, the use regulations for nature preserve. It's the environmental use regulations. The environmental use regulations do relate to Stoneleigh currently, and it will relate to them in the future, but it also relates to other properties that are in environmental nature preserve in the IN district. So what they're asking to change is the major change is the text amendment to change the events from 12 currently to 35 events for the environmental nature preserve. The other 2 changes related to there's a restriction of a closure at dusk right now. They like it to be open to 9 p.m. And the last D is the removal of entirety the limitations for educational events for a maximum of 125 daily visitors. Just go through basically where they are in the text. As I stated before, the first one that comes up is the dusk only. They like to keep it open to no later than 9 p.m., except where it's mentioned in the outdoor events. The outdoor events are allowed to be open past 9 p.m. Secondly, they're removing the section for the educational events to the general public. There's a maximum of 125 daily visitors. That section is asked to be currently fully stricken. And lastly, the maximum of 35 events per year rather than the 12. I'm here to answer any questions if you would have any.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Hall? Go ahead, Commissioner Gladwyne.
Colleen, just one question. You talked about that this would be applicable to all of the IN zoned properties in the township. Can you tell, is that a broad amount of, a number of properties?
No,
Or?
if you look, we provided some background research in the memo. Basically, I did mention that it's mentioning for all IN properties, but environmental nature preserve is only permitted for properties that are over 25 acres, and they also front off a primary, secondary, and tertiary road. So in order to get that environmental nature preserve, you have to be over 25 acres. And currently, in what we have that's zoned IN, there's 2 properties that would be able to use that. There are other properties that are over 25 acres. There's 3 properties that are cemeteries, which would be not environmental nature preserve. We don't intend those to be changed to nature preserves. There's 3 other ones, but they are not fronted off of a primary, secondary, or tertiary road, so they could not utilize this zoning restricted use.
Gotcha. So this is very limited in scope.
It is very limited in
Okay.
scope, yes.
The other is we're making some, I think there are significant changes, right? Making it bigger for educational events, open later, more events. And I can see how that can raise concerns however, we have other regulations that control what can be done. Is that like in terms of parking, in terms of noise, in terms of lighting? Or should we be concerned that we are opening this up and all of a sudden we're, creating a free-for-all, or are we covered by some of those other protections?
We are covered by the noise ordinance for sure. That everything that they talked about before and the changes that they're doing for the noise ordinance will be applicable to this property. They have limits on what they can do for the parking. They can park on site, and then if it doesn't work on site, they use some outside parking from Villanova University. That's worked really well. I think the applicant can speak to some of the things, how they have worked it in the past for the 12 events that they have, but I think that they would be under that same regulations. There's also a conditional use that's for the existing use that has some additional regulations that relate to how they use the property.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, does the applicant wish to make any brief comments? You don't have to, but it's up to you.
We actually don't have anything additional to add, but certainly
Fine.
if you have any questions, we're all here.
Okay. So, thank you. Are there commissioner commissioner comments? Commissioner Gavin.
I'm thrilled that we're finally here. We've been hearing about this property for years and years and years, and it has been a ton of work by so many people within this township. So many residents with, Save Oakwell signs through the years. A number of students in this township took up this cause and really were passionate about it and did their homework and did a ton of work, and I think was a great experience for them and really impacted our community. We heard from one student on another issue tonight, but really the students in our township, not that any of them are listening to this meeting, but I implore them to get more involved because they really can make a difference. The neighbors, thank you to all of the neighbors who really fought to protect this property. The Lower Merion Conservancy, this was my first interaction with the Conservancy, and I was blown away by really their professionalism, their dedication, their caring for the township, and I've seen that throughout their time, and ultimately Natural Lands for protecting this property. So this is, I know we're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming months. I think this is pretty easy. What we're seeing today, I think, is tentative sketch. Frankly, I think it'll be easy, but I know there's going to be a lot more discussion once we get into the details of what's happening. But I implore this board to support this. I think this is a use that everyone in this township has been begging for years, and Natural Lands is a wonderful steward of this property. They've been a wonderful steward of Stoneleigh, and we have not, through the years that Stonelegh's been open, we have not received one complaint about any issue, and frankly, it has been an incredible resource for those who are in the neighbors, or in the neighborhood. And, keeping the ability to keep it open later, I think there's an opportunity for more programming, which will be, great, continuing that as a resource. Bigger educational events is wonderful as well. And, we've had a lot of discussion about these events, and, I'm confident, and we'll see this throughout tentative sketch, that they will be self-contained with the parking, with the noise, with the lighting. That's conversations we've had all along. And I have the utmost confidence in this organization that they will do this right, and this will be an incredible resource for our community. So thrilled that this is moving forward, and thank you to Natural Lands, and thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Do you want to put a motion?
Sure, why not? Do you want other commissioner comment first?
Why don't you do the motion, and then we can, if you want to.
Yes.
Why don't we do the motion, and then we can do Commissioner Zelloff's comments?
Whatever you would like.
As long as you're here.
Sure. As long as I'm here, I'd like to present a motion to consider for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise a public hearing and notice of intent to amend Chapter 155 of the Code of the Township of Lower Merion entitled Zoning, to amend Article 5 Uses, Table 5.3 Use Regulations, IN Institutional Nature Preserve Environmental Use Regulations, and to amend the Lower Merion Township zoning map to rezone properties at 1835 County Line Road and 1800 West Montgomery Avenue from LDR 1 lower density residential to IN Institutional Nature Preserve.
I'll second that. Okay, Commissioner Zelloff.
Commissioner Grimes, it's remarkable that we're starting this process. And Natural Lands has done remarkable work. Its president, Oliver Bass, is in the audience. Welcome. And to Natural Land supporters and to Stoneleigh, we thank you. But we also thank our colleague who is in the countdown until the early January. Andy, thank you so much for getting our community to this point and all the work that you've done behind the scenes to what started out when Stoneleigh first opened. The next day was an eminent domain threat. And here we are, that Stoneleigh is thriving and now proposing to expand. And I know there's more work to do in this room, but thank you for all your work. That's not enough. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Are there other commissioners who wish to make comments? See, all right, we'll take public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to offer public comment? You can come up to the podium, please.
Good evening. I am Kelly Biesecker, and I'm happy to be here in support of Stoneleigh and the Natural Lands Trust. I reside at and steward Squirrel Inn, originally part of the Stoneleigh estate. We are attending this meeting in order to consider the Natural Lands Trust plans for the parcels known as Acorn Cottage and Oakwell. I'm delighted to have seen the plans that the Natural Lands Trust presents for repurposing, restoring, and recognizing the great value of these historic gardens and architecture. Natural Lands Trust, Molly, First, and now Oliver and Ethan, and all of those dedicated to working daily to maintain the grounds, have kept us apprised of future plans for the area. Natural Lands Trust have been open, communicative, and welcoming. As their closest neighbor, I express my gratitude. We have consistently enjoyed the most friendly relationship, as I have been a neighbor of Stoneleigh for nearly 3 decades. We are a young country of settlers and indigenous peoples. Our campaign to preserve, restore, and repurpose Oakwell and Acorn Cottage as an integral part of Stoneleigh, our local history, as well as our neighborhood environment and community, is invaluable. We are also a large collective of voices who were heard after years of work to complete this goal. To lose the brilliance of the Olmsted Gardens would have been a shame, but now to enjoy the natural artistry for all generations is a gift. I support all applications for Stoneleigh and the Natural Lands Trust to improve the natural garden and maintain the newly reunited properties. I'm very eager to follow the evolution of these plans and Natural Lands Trust vision. Lastly, Future generations are gifted with the opportunity now to experience and appreciate these gardens. John and Cara prioritized education, preservation, conservation, artistic endeavors. It is a noble legacy. They would be so happy today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Seeing none here, is there anyone online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, we will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you, and I would just note that I anticipate we will be seeing Natural Lands again in a few weeks on the tentative sketch plan. So we'll see you soon. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, this is the concerns and authorization to advertise an ordinance, Chapter 155 zoning for tobacco retailer and lot occupation zoning amendments. This is on page 84 of the packets for anyone following that way. Ms. Hall, you have some brief comments for us?
Yeah, can just go through the ordinance with you. I don't really have any comments specifically, but I could just run through the changes.
Okay.
The application that you have before you for the authorization to advertise for the ordinance, there's 3 parts to it. First, we're adding definitions. The 2 definitions are for hookah bar and significant tobacco retailer. This was at the Planning Commission 2 months in a row. It was actually part of another group of ordinance amendments that we brought forward. However, they asked us to take it out and do some more work on it, and we came back with this new definition for the significant tobacco retailer. Basically, we're going to change some of Article 5 to permit the significant tobacco retail as a specialized retail use in our commercial districts. There's no, none of the commercial districts are excluded. They're all of them. The last part is for the lot occupation. We're trying to restore one of the earlier amendments that we did beforehand, inadvertently removed 2 sections that we'd like to put back into the ordinance. So basically, I just wanted to go through both of the definitions. Significant tobacco retail does include a hookah bar, so that's why we're defining hookah bar also. The basic premise of what we're trying to regulate here is to put a separation requirements between the significant tobacco retailers. We're going to do a minimum distance of 1,000 feet from another one of them. So it's like a separation requirement. The other 2 parts are just basically providing the adequate ventilation and then having the federal and state laws. As I stated before, the lot occupation section, these 2 sections, 1 and 2, were actually inadvertently removed when we did another amendment. The zoning officer uses these 2 sections pretty frequently in his daily so we're just trying to get them back in because it's really important to have the accessory buildings have the principal the 2 parts. They have the 2 stories in the envelope, and then outside the envelope it can only give you 15 feet. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Are these questions for Ms. Hall? Yes. That's fine. Why don't we start with Commissioner Kramer?
My first question is, when you're looking at the section on Article 3 lot occupation, is this applicable to all zoning districts, including residential?
Yes, it's applicable to residential.
Okay. Do you want comments now or just questions?
Right now, just questions.
Okay. Yes, I will ask you another question then.
Okay.
Did you, in proposing that this go back in, consider neighborhoods like mine that where everything is non-conforming and many of the accessory structures are non-conforming and in the sides?
Well, these would be for new structures. They wouldn't be related to existing structures. But, so I don't think we would have considered that now.
Okay, so how would this impact on our efforts to, the Affordable Housing Committee to allow, or at least explore allowing, more accessory dwelling units to be occupied? Is this going to limit them to one story?
No. So the purpose of this is really to address the need for the double frontage lots, if I'm correct here, right?
No, I mean, it's not for the double frontage lots, but, I mean, accessory structures that are close to the property line are limited to 15 feet now, currently in the zoning ordinance. We don't allow two-story structures in the back there. So, yes, we would be limiting accessory dwelling units if they were in the back of the property, not within the primary setbacks. Yeah, if it's in the primary setbacks, they can go up to 20 feet. And that would allow for maybe a 1.5-story structure within the primary setbacks.
Okay, but what about the many properties like in my neighborhood where you have the accessory building, typically a garage, next to the house? I mean, there are many, many of them like that where they aren't. My neighborhood is like 100+ years old, and none of these rules and regulations existed when my neighborhood was built. So it's very common to have a house and then right next to it a driveway with a garage. And many of those garages have been, or people would like to convert them into homes or, accessory dwelling units. But if you limit those to one story, you're effectively making it impossible for anybody to do that because the accessory dwelling units are so small that they really have to be 2 stories. So I'm asking my question, this is partly a comment, partly a question. Have you really looked at the impact that this would have on our ability to do anything to expand the availability of accessory dwelling units to address the affordable housing issue in this township?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think it came up when we were trying to put these 2 sections back in the code. I mean,
okay. That's it for my questions.
Okay, that's it, all right.
What?
Commissioner Zeloff and then Commissioner Churchill.
Thanks, Commissioner Grimes. I think I know the answer because when I read it the first time earlier today, I couldn't find it. A hookah bar is a subset of a significant tobacco retailer, correct?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's not clear in the memo,
It's not clear in the memo.
but
You are
it is
correct.
clear in the draft ordinance.
Yes, I was going to point that out too.
Okay, so you're
yes.
confirming that.
Yes, I am confirming
Great.
that. The ordinance would dictate.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. Commissioner Grimes did want comments. So that was my question.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
We'll go back to, you have a question or you have
I
comment?
have, yes. I'm going to go in a little different direction because a vaping store has been granted in our commercial strip. Our neighbors are upset about that because it is literally across the street from a synagogue. It is literally across a parking lot from a church, and it's about 2 blocks from our Penguin Elementary Elementary School. The comment that I would make is you have proposing here a 1,000-foot separation between tobacco retailers. Had you thought about some kind of separation between schools and religious institutions when you were looking at amendments?
Yeah, it wasn't something we initially considered. We did bring it to the solicitor's attention and asked him to question if it would be a legal thing that we could limit them from schools, perhaps for a separation of 1,000 feet from there, and it's certainly possible, and it seems like it might be a reasonable thing to do, yes.
Okay.
So you would have to amend it and add that in as a section.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's numerous examples throughout many of the cities in the state here. Philadelphia, Reading, Allentown, all have those regulations from actual schools.
Okay.
I didn't find anything for synagogues or religious uses.
Well,
I don't.
An
know for
amendment, I
schools,
hope,
but schools
will be
certainly.
coming shortly. Also, I looked at a number of these vaping stores, and their hours of regulation really vary. And the question that I have is, do we have the power? I don't mean a question. What is the current regulation for regulating these hours of vaping stores or hookah bars?
You mean for the existing ones that are in the
Yes.
township? They would be a normal retail use, whatever's permitted as a retail use, that would be what they could do for their hours of operation. We don't typically limit hours of operation in the zoning code.
Okay. We typically don't, but can we? I'm sorry for asking a question.
I can step in
Yeah.
on this. Just because we've had this question come up with a couple existing, vape shops, hookah lounges. These type of uses are, the operations themselves are strictly regulated by the state. So if you were to ask us who can stipulate how they operate, we're restricted in terms of implementing the zoning code, where they are located, and making sure that the uses comply with our land use designs for the community. But how they operate, that is something that is regulated by the state.
So some stores are open till 10, others close to midnight, and it would be, from what you're saying, the state would regulate those hours?
Not necessarily, they put, how they can operate, the hours themselves, as long as they comply with some of our retail stipulations, we can't really dictate, other than spacing and how, it's used in our community, the land use side of things or the zoning. We can't really stipulate, particular hours per se.
Okay. Thank you. I will be proposing an amendment shortly.
Fine, so let's do this. Does anyone else have any questions?
Can I just add something
Please.
else? I don't think we fully answered Commissioner Kramer's question here. This piece we're putting back in is one that was inadvertently taken out, but the principle here in terms of what the impact with all the properties that exist now, if they're a non-conforming use, they're a non-conforming use. They have a right to stay. They have a right to a certain amount of expansion. And so what this is really regulating is what you can build anew. And if you're going to be too close, you're going to violate the setback requirements and be too close to your neighbor, then it brings down the height you're allowed to build. If you're going to stay within the setback requirements and not be too close to your neighbor by our zoning standards, then you can go higher. But to those properties that exist now, it really doesn't affect them.
I guess my question really is, suppose you have a house with the garage next door to it, or would that prohibit that garage from being turned into an accessory dwelling unit?
No, I'm assuming.
Or having it be maybe more than one story if somebody wanted to add an extra story to it in order to make it habitable for somebody.
Much of that will depend upon how we write, if we do write, accessory dwelling unit zoning amendment to put in regulations that would say, now you're allowed to do them, and here's what you're allowed to do within these conditions. You could write that accessory dwelling unit ordinance that would allow certain things to be exceeded,
but that'll come with that legislation. The impact right now is really none on the existing properties. And until we write accessory dwelling unit zoning standards, we can't answer fully that question.
Well, that clears things up.
It could easily,
Actually, it does. I was
Yeah.
being facetious.
You don't want somebody to build something too
you
large
did,
next to
right.
your
Yes.
house, right?
No, I get it.
it could easily be included in the future as an incentive, right? Like if you were to do some kind of incentive that was included in the policy. But these are completely kind of separate issues, right?
Okay. Yeah, it's up to
I'd
you.
still
All
feel
right.
more comfortable if this weren't in here at this point.
So let's move to comments now. Commissioner Kramer, since you have the floor, did you want to make some comments?
I just think that I would feel a whole lot more comfortable with this if this section weren't in here right now. And that if we weren't putting something in that we're then going to have to make exceptions to later, or that we're going to have to adjust later. So I guess my motion would be to take this section out of, or my proposal would be to take this section out once the motion is made.
All right, so why don't we do this? Because we don't have a motion on the table. So I'm going to make a motion, and then we can discuss amendments. I'm going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of a public hearing and intend to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 155, entitled Zoning, to amend the definition section to add new definitions for hookah bar and significant tobacco retailer, to amend Article 3, lot occupation, to restore regulations for maximum height for accessory buildings, and to permit and regulate significant tobacco retailer as a specialty retail use. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Okay, so did you want to propose an amendment?
Yes, I would propose an amendment to consolidate subparagraphs 1 and 2 to allow the accessory buildings built either in the back, in the principal building envelope, or in the reduced side or rear setback, to be allowed to be 2 stories or 20 feet in height.
All right. I'm going to ask you to state it because I'm not following you. You're looking at subsection F.
Okay, let me go into the actual, I'm reading from the description.
Page 92.
Yeah, let me actually go in here.
It's page 92.
So what I would do is, under subsection F, I would eliminate paragraph 2 and say accessory buildings shall be limited to 2 stories or 20 feet in height, and not make the distinction between in where they're located.
So in other words, if I may, you're just saying delete
2.
section 2
2.
under F.
And delete 2 under F and say accessory buildings, and then delete in the principal building envelope. So it should be, just read, accessory buildings shall be limited to 2 stories or 20 feet in height, regardless of where they're located.
So you're deleting in 1, you're deleting in the principal building envelope. Did I hear you correctly?
That's correct.
So you're deleting, you would delete that.
And then delete all of subparagraph 2.
And you're deleting subparagraph 2 totally.
That's correct.
Okay. Does everyone understand the amendment? Okay. Are there comments?
You need a second on that.
Oh, is there a second? Thank you. Commissioner Epstein is seconding. All right. Are there comments on the amendment? Vice President Kramer?
I have a question, maybe for staff, how, and for Manager McNeely, how much does it hamper the work of our zoning officer if we change, this was put back in order to, because he's running into the problem of it not being in the code currently, right?
That's correct, yes.
So if we change this part, how much is, how often are we going to be creating unintentional issues where other people are going to be saying, well, this is, this isn't in this is the code, I can build this garage that's 20 feet high, and I don't have to have somebody living in it as a form of affordable housing.
Yeah, I think if the change that was proposed was put forth, it's going to allow for a 20-foot structure to be right almost 5 feet from the property line. Because the way these two sections work is that the accessory building has to be within the primary setbacks, which would be a 25 rear yard setback and two 20-foot side yard setbacks. Then it could go up to 20 feet. The other section says that it can go to the accessory structures, which would be to 5 feet on the property line. It can only be 15 feet. So if the changes were put in force, that's going to make larger buildings be closer to the property line when they're built.
So my concern here, thank you. My concern here is that, I hear what Mr. Doyle said, that we could potentially allow for this kind of an increase in height as an incentive to create an accessory dwelling unit that is actually used for housing, right? Or I guess accessory dwelling is housing. Well, it's not okay. All right, I'm answering my own question. But that we can use this to create an incentive so that somebody could create housing. But if we're just, saying your accessory building can now be 20 feet high, you can just have a ginormous garage that isn't benefiting anyone in
Much
terms of
closer to the
housing.
setback, yeah.
Right.
So the externalities there from something that's intended, we want to intend to further the ADU policy, that's great. I think at that point, that's probably, this is a great point for us to address now and discuss. And I think we should do that at our ad hoc committee meetings.
Yeah.
Because this will be one of the premier kind of things that we're talking about at that point, because we'll really want to, address those externalities and impacts that are associated with any ADUs possible, right?
Right.
And that's really what we're concerned about at that point.
Right.
But to have this kind of omnipresent throughout the township would maybe much unwarranted by many of the residents, or unwanted by the residents.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, I appreciate Commissioner Kramer's, the intention, right, is to make sure that we're not boxing ourselves out of creating accessory dwelling units. We don't want to do that. But I think this may be not the way to do it, that we can come back and change this. If we change this now, we can come back and change it again later and in the creation of accessory dwelling units.
Yes, and the timing of this is important too, right? That we're going to be addressing, hopefully, if the policy is of the ADUs, it will be coming up sooner than later.
Yeah.
Right? So this overlap, I don't think will have much of an effect if we're moving forward with the action and assessment plan.
Okay. So in that case, I think just so you know, I won't support the amendment just because I think of what you just said. Okay, thanks.
Other commissioner comments on the amendment? Yeah, I would just say, I agree with Vice President Kramer. I'm concerned mostly about sort of other unintended consequences of this amendment right now without having a chance to look it over, so I'm not going to support it. Anyone else? All right, let's take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor, raise your hands. 3 opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see 7 opposed, so the motion fails. Other commissioner questions, comments? Commissioner Churchill, sure.
Yes. I'd like to make a friendly amendment, and this on page 87, about a third of the way down, it says a significant tobacco retailer shall be a minimum distance of 1,000 feet from any other significant tobacco retailer. I would like to add educational and religious institution, and then continued measured along a straight line between the closest walls of each establishment.
Respectfully, did you mean education or religious institution?
No, and.
And?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, so it should be and.
So Commissioner Churchill has amended the memo, not the text.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I was about to say that. I think you want it on page 91, it would be
Okay.
in the, if you, respectfully, you tell me if I'm wrong. It would be in the chart, under specialized retail. You would want it, the first bullet point, you would add under significant tobacco retailer, education, and religious institution. Is that what you're?
That's correct.
Okay,
And I would
fine.
point that as a friendly amendment.
I'm going to say no, only because
That's
I'd like to
okay.
hear what others have to say.
Okay.
Are there commissioner comments on the amendment?
You need a second on the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, is there a second? Commissioner Zeloff, thank you, or Mr. McNeely. Comments on the amendment? Commissioner Epstein?
I have a question / comment. I'm not sure I fully understand the educational and, I understand the educational institution, but the religious institutions, if they don't have an educational component,
That's what I was.
that's where are you saying any church or like a religious institution that also has some sort of educational component? Like a preschool?
I would
don't
say
know.
yes. The example that I would give you is in my ward on Manoa Road, there is a proposed vaping store coming in. Pardon me? I'm sorry. Coming in on Manoa Road, and it is literally across the street from synagogue, which does have an educational component, and next to the parking lot of a church, which does have a daycare center.
Yeah, right.
And it's also about 2 blocks from Penguin Elementary School.
Yeah, right. So I guess I actually can't think of a religious institution that doesn't have some sort of educational component. So I wonder if we can, I don't know if I can amend the amendment. I would just suggest that we lean into the educational and maybe just keep it there. Seems like a clearer directive.
Fine.
Okay, so,
Can I just interject one
Please.
thing? The policy that I looked at, a lot of these policies had for the educational uses, like schools, it was about 500 feet. I know we have, these are separation requirements. So this is a little different because we're separating these uses between each other, right? So this is slightly different concept than what we're introducing in that portion, if that makes sense, right?
May I respond to that?
sure, still have the floor.
This is for advertising. I think once we get to, after we digest this, and you may bring up 500 feet, neighbors may want something different, but I think I would keep it as 1,000. When we get to discussing it, I would be open to changing, if it makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. The only thing that I did want to bring up, though, is that they're 2 slightly different concepts. You're separating 2 different of the same uses from each other,
Yes.
right? The policy that you would come up with would be omnipresent throughout the township. You can't be near any educational use, right? So there's a slightly different
For
difference.
new retail operations.
Absolutely for new retail
Yes.
operations, but again, this is within proximity to 2 of the same uses. So 2 vape shops can't be near each other within 1,000 feet,
Correct.
right? That's one concept.
Yes.
The second concept would then be another code section that would just say, not within 500 feet or not within 1,000 feet of a school. So I
Correct.
think adding it in that area may be slightly different than within the proximity of the 2, is all I'm saying, if that makes sense.
I
A
think you're saying
distinction without a difference.
it should be just a separate bullet point under there. Don't lump it in with the
Oh, I see.
tobacco
So-
retailer, just make it its own thing.
Correct.
You know?
Thank you.
She's
You're welcome.
suggesting,
Commissioner Grimes has a point of order,
Point of order, go ahead.
If you advertise as 1,000, then it comes to the board, you want to change it to 500, you're going to be hitting a reset button where you're not going to be able to do that at the board level. You're going to have to bring it back. So now would be the time to set the distance.
okay, so thank you. So we're suggesting the suggestion is to have a separate bullet point that would, if I may, that would say a significant tobacco retailer shall be a minimum distance of 1,000 feet from any education institution. That's the suggestion, taking into account what Commissioner Epstein had said. Yeah.
Amendment, and if anyone wants to make a friendly amendment, reduce it to 500.
Again, go, Manager McNeely.
If you're going to have separation requirement, you got to have separation requirements from other uses that are defined in the zoning code.
Right.
So I don't have one in front of me, but I suspect we have one that says educational uses. And there'd be a separate one that would call for religious uses.
Right.
That's where we can't say educational institution because I don't think that's a defined term in the zoning code. So if you want a separation requirement, it's got to be a separation from uses that are defined in the zoning code.
Okay.
Of course, yeah.
So it would go back to educational institutions and religious institutions.
Educational uses or religious uses.
Or religious uses, if that's what we intend
If that's
to
your
do.
intent.
Well, I don't know if it's or, it's and.
No,
No,
because if
it's
it's
not,
and, it
because
would
then
have to
you
be
would have
both.
to have, then you'd be limiting
Right,
to
okay.
just the
Right,
religious
okay.
aspects that are having
Unless-
education.
Unless that's
I
your
refer to the
intention.
wordsmiths.
So education, so now we're creating a new bullet point. The proposal is to create a new bullet point. A significant tobacco retailer shall be a minimum distance of 1,000 feet from any other, or shoot,
Not
from
other.
any educational uses or religious uses. Is that your amendment, Commissioner Churchill? Your
Yes.
proposed amendment? Okay. So.
Is that second?
Is there a second? Thank you. So it's seconded. Are there comments on the proposed amendment? Commissioner Gabbard?
I have a question. I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this. It seems like in our downtowns where these establishments would be, there are a lot of educational or religious institutions. Will this prevent a significant tobacco retailer from operating anywhere in our township?
That's a great question. I think the analysis we'd have to go through in, using our GIS systems to really look at those uses. That was one of my concerns though, if we were to, when we started to lump those proximity things, and then we, it's already starting to kind of conflate things. But that was coming to my mind was like, how many of these uses are within proximity and would we just de facto, prohibit them throughout the township? Not sure.
Yeah.
The other thing we could do is look at what districts they're permitted within, right? We don't have to have them within every district. I think your district that you're speaking of is the NC district, where we could have just, we could just outright prohibit tobacco shops or vape shops or hookah shops within those NC districts. I mean, it makes sense anyway because it's, neighborhood commercial. That may be another option. The other thing I did want to bring up, our definition of like a school is called an institutional educational use. So you were very close to, it was, if we had just said it the other way, it would have been perfect. But I think these are great concepts and I'm happy to explore these things to move this policy forward.
So, and my concern, and I think the intent of not having these near schools makes complete sense, and I'm on board with it. My concern is we're going to have an illegal law if we de facto, eliminate these.
Especially with the religious type of uses,
Yeah.
Schools are one thing, but,
Right.
Religious uses are.
So the other question is, and Ernie, this is probably a question for you, if we advertise it with that regulation and then we have to take that out, are we resetting is it okay to be more restrictive and then advertise it more restrictive and then take it out, or would we have to re-advertise it?
You make a substantial change. You got to prepare a new ordinance, re-advertise it. You have to go back through the county and local planning commissions.
Okay, so that said, as much as I believe in the concept behind it, I don't think without having that data, I can support this. Thank you.
Would you feel better about 500 feet?
I still don't have the data. I don't,
Okay. Commissioner Zelwar?
Commissioner Grimes, in the absence of President Sinai, who is very much about process. I'm going to suggest that since next Wednesday, we have a board meeting, that we table this after we go through all comments and other potential amendments. And we ask staff to come back in a committee meeting prior to the board meeting that meets the intent that Commissioner Churchill has expressed and that I support and perhaps others do, so that it takes into account the concerns that we've heard from staff, because to write zoning code on the fly ain't a good
Well
idea.
taken. Is there?
And so I would ask that at the proper time, that's where we go, and I'm happy to make that motion at the right time.
I just think that staff is not going to have enough time.
Let staff say that if
Get
they
all
could.
this data together.
Yeah.
In time for us to get an agenda out with the appropriate information.
Staff, led by Charlie.
Needs to be fertilized by trying to.
I can't do it in a day. I could definitely do it by next week, but not in a day. I don't think I could turn it around in a day.
Can you do it before you go home tonight?
I can try my darndest. I just want to be, the most important thing is be accurate for you guys and
correct.
present something that's reflective of what this is. The only problem with this is also that we would have to kind of forensically go through while we know what uses are permitted within specific districts, we may not know specifically what land use is on each lot, if that makes sense, right? So we would have to go look at where each kind of use is, if that makes sense.
How much time do you need?
Pardon me?
How much time do you need?
That's a fair question.
Yeah, I believe it would only take 2 to 3 days to really look at this and assess it properly.
So next week, if we meet,
No, but
You'd
it's
be
got to go out as
comfortable?
advertised.
The problem is it wouldn't be included in the agenda for
It has to be.
public consumption.
Hold on, yeah, Vice President Kramer.
I propose that we table this to a date certain to the next BNP meeting in November.
Which is beginning
That'll
of
give you
November.
time to work this through.
I promise I can do it by then.
That would be November 12th.
November 12th.
That's more than enough time.
Okay.
Is,
All right.
is that sufficient time if the board were to pursue this ordinance that, to advertise these changes and have it done before the end of the year?
Is there urgency?
No.
That would be
I
my
don't think so.
concern, yeah.
There's no.
I mean, the other thing we could do is just move this forward and then have a subsequent addition put onto the code, right?
May I take the floor back, Commissioner Grimes?
If Vice President Kramer's finished, yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Perhaps we can amend it, see if it passes
Yeah.
tonight, and we could then, with staff work between now and next Wednesday, they could propose a clarifying amendment if they feel that it's necessary based on their work between now and next Wednesday.
And then we have a committee meeting before the Board of Commissioners meeting,
Yes.
because amendments could technically be proposed right then,
Yeah.
right?
We can do that if that's what you want to do.
Well, I would suggest that might be, let's take our best stab at this tonight, and then if we need to do this before respectfully, because that's out of my
Still not
thing,
gonna
right?
have
We can do it
information
before the
go
Board
with
of
the agenda.
Commissioners meeting.
You're back to drafting on the fly, if I may.
Yeah,
and
well,
without the information that we were going to get about how what number of properties may this actually impact or not impact, and are we talking about just the educational uses? Are we talking about religious institutions that only have an educational component? We're sort of doing a lot of guesswork here to cram this in. Is there some urgency to this that I may be missing? That, this is out there? I mean,
Not on our side, none.
yeah, I mean, is somebody pressing us one way or the other?
Not for these, I mean, the uses within the distance of each other,
No,
I think.
just the entire ordinance per se. I understand why we're doing it, But is there some compelling?
Code's been like this for a while now. It's not going to kill us if we
Right,
don't.
right. So if we wait to get it right before we bring it forward, I would wholeheartedly suggest we do that, since there's nothing pressing other than the clock that's currently kicking.
May I hold it, Commissioner Stevenson,
Whoa.
were you saying something?
Yeah, may I speak to this, please?
What do you say?
Yeah, go ahead. Just say yes.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
So unlike some of my other colleagues who in their areas have protectionism of zoning, if you drive down Ardmore and Lancaster Avenue, you will see within 2 blocks, 3 vape shops. So the urgency is because we need to avoid the continuation of making our township, and particularly in the Ardmore area, a vape central. So there is an urgency, and it needs to be done now before, because if we continue, we'll end up with yet another vape shop. So again, while others have that luxury of protectionism, this is paramount for areas that have the less protection of zoning. So, thank you.
If I may
Thank you.
make a
So-
suggestion,
and then
right,
let's
to move this
make a
forward,
decision,
and
yes.
with all due respect to my colleague who's here remotely, I don't think it's a matter of different areas having different protections and some don't, which is why I asked the question. I'm glad, Commissioner Stevens, you brought up something to which I was unaware of, why this has an element of importance. So being consistent that we don't try to draft on the fly, and if there is this element of urgency that's there, what we may want to consider is passing this as drafted. If we then need to come back with a subsequent amendment, then we will have provided the appropriate amount of time for our staff to do the research, and then that we can come forward and do that one singular amendment as it relates to educational uses at a subsequent time.
Okay.
Including next Wednesday.
So that would, thank you for the comment. That would require, at this point, since you have an amendment, I believe it was seconded, so you would have to withdraw,
right.
to withdraw the amendment, if that's what you care to do. Or we can vote on it.
No, I respect what Commissioner Bernheim is saying, that, and I believe in the next couple of weeks that this amendment will pass. So
Okay.
I will withdraw the amendment.
Okay, thank you. So are there other commissioners who wish to comment? Commissioner Zello.
Commissioner Grimes, I would just add to what Commissioner Bernheim said with staff, in my view, the goal should be next Wednesday to give us an opportunity to amend. There is no meeting on the 29th, and there's no B&P on the 5th, so we go out 4 weeks to Commissioner Stevenson's valid concerns. And so if staff can draft something that considers the comments that have been made, given the withdrawal of the motion by Commissioner Churchill, and potentially for us to consider amending next week, which we can do in the board meeting, I believe, without the need for a
Okay.
special committee meeting.
All right.
Looking at Jody and Ernie, they're shaking their heads yes.
So-
So, thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Sure, so we have a motion on the table, unless other commissioners have comments. Okay, we seem to have a direction now. All right, so we will call the vote on the motion unamended. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Anything, I count one, Commissioner Woodring, your hands up? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Commissioner Stevenson, okay, you're in favor, I take it. So everyone, any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the Historical Commission applications on page 94. There are 5 of them. Would any commissioners like any of these to be considered separately? Or to hear presentations on any of them? All right, I see none. So I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners the following applications as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think we did public comment on
Oh.
the thing you guys just voted on.
You know, you are correct. Did anyone want to offer public comment on the prior matter? I apologize. Was there someone online? Whew. Okay. We okay now? All right. Now I have to start over again. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners the following applications as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meetings held on September 29 and October 7, 2025. 306 Ball Avenue, Ballackinwood, Class 2, 2025-R-12, approval to construct a deck and ADA ramp on side-facing elevations to the rear of the residence, with a subcommittee to review additional details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. 514 Spring Mill Road, Villanova, Class 2, 2025-R5A, amendment of an approval to construct a rear addition with exterior finishes to match those of the existing structure, with a pergola to connect the proposed addition with the existing garage to meet zoning requirements, with a subcommittee to review additional details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. 601 Conshohocken State Road, Penn Valley, Class 2, 2025-R13, approval to install a Tesla solar roof on a stone barn, with a subcommittee to review additional details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9. 10 Montgomery Avenue, Ballackinwood, Class 2, 2025-R11, approval to install bracket-mounted corner banners, hanging retail signage, and repair materials on a pent roof, with a subcommittee to review additional details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. And 46 St. James Place, Ardmore, Class 2, 2025-R15, approval to install signage and make other facade modifications to a historic suburban square storefront, with a subcommittee to review additional details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavrin. What?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, thank you. You'll miss that as much as I will. Commissioner Zelloff, you had a comment?
I have a question for Greg. As far as you know, do all 5 property owners agree?
Yes, they were all present at the meeting, and there was no opposition.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We now move to the certificates of appropriateness on page 127. There are 3 of them. Would any commissioners like any of these considered separately? Seeing none, I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architecture Review Board at their meeting held on October 7, 2025. 65 Cricket Avenue, Suite 101, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 25-22. Approval to install halo-lit channel letters above one of the Cricket Flat storefronts, citing Secretary of Interior Standard 9. 421 Berkeley Road, Haverford Station Historic District 25-23. Approval to replace sliding and garage doors in a garage at the rear of the property, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. And 419 Arthur's Round Table, English Village Historic District 25-24. Approval to replace wood siding with a composite material, install new lighting fixtures, and make various repairs to trim and masonry, with a subcommittee to review exterior materials and mortar selection, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Rossman. Are there any questions, comments on these matters? Yes, Commissioner Gavrin.
Very quick comment. I just want to point out that we are not requiring like-kind replacement of, as we heard earlier tonight, like, oh, you have to replace like-kind. There are options that are appropriate that are not like-kind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, we will call the vote. Is there public comment? I'm sorry. Sorry. No, seeing none and no one online, right?
No.
Okay, good. We'll now call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. I have in my hands the final matter tonight. This is an authorization to advertise ordinance, Chapter 155, zoning, freestanding ground and monument size zoning amendment. We will have Mr. Doyle, or you're the one, this is, if you have any brief comments, I would just note that we are only considering advertising this tonight, so go ahead.
So I believe this is a relatively simple change in the code. It's simply addressing signage that's permanent. These freestanding monument signs are a little classier than most of your other signs where it's just a pole. These have a little more structure to them, a feeling of permanence. And what we're doing is trying to put them within our MDR2 and MDR3 districts, and only on the properties that have more than 6 units. So they're the multifamily large units. We've noticed that a lot of these signs are already existing throughout the township. We wanted to tighten up our code. And again, these are a little more than just a pole and a sign, right? And also, they're larger than what is permitted now. A lot of these, the MDR2 and MDR3 properties, especially the ones with the apartments on them, the larger apartments, are on those primary and secondary roads where you're driving at a higher speed. You need to be able to see the signs a little further away, and this gives that opportunity there.
Okay, thank you. Questions let me put a motion on the table. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of a public hearing and intend to adopt an ordinance to amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 155, entitled Zoning, Table 9.1, permitted sign locations and permit types to allow a freestanding ground monument signs in the MDR2 and MDR3 districts by permit, and Table 9.2, General Sign Type Standard and Regulations, Section E, freestanding ground monument sign, to amend the regulations for height and to permit a maximum height of 4 feet for multifamily large buildings and to permit a maximum sign area of 20 feet for multifamily large buildings. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Okay. Commissioner questions, comments? Seeing none. Okay. Is there any public comment? So I get it right by the end. All right. And no one online. All right. So we will call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Madam Vice President, that concludes the business of building and planning.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. And before we wrap up this evening, I'm going to pass things over to Commissioner Bernheim real quick.
Thank you very much, Vice President Kramer. There's one obligatory announcement that I have. I know that many people are still reeling from the loss of the Phillies and the Eagles getting clipped by the Giants, and one may think, what does that have to do with Lower Merion Township? And the answer is absolutely nothing. But we talked about things that we do historically, and there is one element of something that is done historically. Commissioner Zeloff and I have an annual singles tennis match, and the requirement is that not the loser but the runner-up announce the results. And there was to be a photograph that I gave folks downstairs. I'm not sure what they did with it. Maybe they're asleep or just so amazed by this that they're startled.
Oh, there it is. Looking good.
All right, yes. And, all I will say is that it was really a very close match up until the point that I opened the can of tennis balls. And thereafter, as a true Phillies fan, all I can say to my friend and colleague is there's always next year. Thank you.
That concludes our business for this evening. Good night, everyone.
you.